And remember to silence your cell phones if you have them. First item on the agenda is election of the temporary chair to preside over the election of the chairperson. I'm willing to serve in this role.
I would nominate you for that.
Second.
Is there a second required for nominations?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah, I second it.
Motion by Taylor, second by Radig. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item 2 is election of the chairperson. Are there any nominations?
I would nominate Chairman Ung again as a supervisor for the chair, just because I think going into some election years, some of us have elections, and I think Mark and I don't think are ready this year to serve as chair. Mark's already in the LEC, and so I'd nominate Chairman Ung again. That's my recommendation.
Is there a second required?
Yes, this is an action item, please.
And I'll second it.
Are there any other nominations? Going once? Going twice? Can I declare nominations closed, or do we have to move that?
Go ahead and move it.
I'll move to close nominations.
Second.
Second by Nelson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Is there any discussion on election of myself as chairperson for the 2024 session? Mr. Taylor.
I would just ask one thing, and it's something that you brought up in the past, and so I've been very appreciative of at least the question, knowing that nominations are closed right now. We've talked in the past as far as who's chairing, if that person would have a commitment to absolutely not raising the levy rate. And that's something that I think you've brought up in the past admirably. And so that would be my question. If your commitment is to guiding our board in a way that wouldn't raise the levy rate. I know we're facing probably the largest increase in the last 2 decades. So just wanted to ask that question if you would.
Sure. Yes, that would be my intention, to not raise the tax rate for a 10th year in a row. This year was the toughest year for the board to do that, and we did it. We have a lot of tools at our disposal that and we have a greater period of time to certify the budget this year by the end of April. So we'll be looking to the strengths of everyone on this board to do what we can and make sure that that is the goal.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful and have my support.
Anything from anyone else? You seconded, Mr. Nelson. Why are you doing this to me?
You're welcome.
Oh, okay. Anyone else? I'll say until last month, it hasn't really been on my radar as far as chairing for a second year. But I have had several people inside and out of county government ask me to stay on for a second year. The board has gone through enough changes as of late, so I don't anticipate major changes to the committee assignments unless specific issues are brought to my attention. Appreciate the trust and the honor. I'll have a couple more remarks if I'm successful in this vote. Any other discussion? If not, then please call the roll.
Bittinger,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Radig,
Aye.
Taylor,
Aye.
Ung.
Aye. Well, passes 5-0. Before we move on, I just want to make a few quick remarks. Life is pretty ironic, how things happen. When I had all the time in the world back in 2018, and I nominated myself to chair a second year in a row. I got voted down because the tradition to rotate the chairmanship was very important. And now I have quite a few more job responsibilities, varied responsibilities, more travel for work, mission trips, and family. I didn't ask for this, but this time the board gave it to me. That said, I'm still honored and understand why my colleagues came to this conclusion on their own. I do think we all bring our own strengths to the table, and my motive as chair isn't to talk the most or do the most, but for the board as a whole to efficiently but methodically get the work done. It is rare for a chairman to serve 2 years in a row. In fact, the last time it happened was 16 years ago. But 2023 was a year full of rare occurrences for the board, and I expect 2024 will uniquely challenge my colleagues individually for various reasons. So I'll be focusing my efforts and judgment on the more important decisions that come before the board, and I'll ask for grace on less urgent issues. Saying yes to chairing a second year comes with that understanding. We'll move on to the election of the vice chairperson. I would like to say that Dan Bittinger, I believe, is someone I can trust and rely on to work cooperatively with me and my schedule, and he has the benefit of not concerning himself with an election year like the other three. So I will ask the board to support him as vice chairman, but I'll open nominations at this time. Are there any nominations for vice chairperson?
I'll nominate Dan Bittinger.
Hearing that Dan was interested, I'll second.
Did he grunt a little bit on approval? Okay.
Official head nod.
Motion by Nelson, second by Taylor. Any discussion or questions? Anything from you, Mr. Bittinger?
No, looking forward to serving if voted in, but just willing to do whatever, to like what you said, to make sure the board operates efficiently and we get things done, so.
I'll move to close nominations.
Second.
Second by Nelson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. On the motion to elect Mr. Bittinger as vice chairperson for the 2024 session, roll call, please.
Bittinger.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Radig.
Aye.
Taylor.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 5-0. Thank you, everybody. All right, moving on. Item 4 is approval of the agenda. I'll move it.
Second.
Second by Taylor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Items 5 through 12 constitute a consent agenda of routine action items to be considered by one motion. Items pass unanimously unless a separate vote is requested by a board member. Item 5 is approval of the minutes of the December 19th meeting and approval of the minutes of the December 15th special legislative roundtable meeting. Item 6 is approval of the claims. Item 7 is the annual approval for the existing rules for public participation in meetings. It's just been recommended to approve this annually, so it's on record. No changes were made. Item 8 from Human Resources includes A, approval of the memorandum of personnel transactions, B, authorization to initiate the hiring process, C, approval of a request to deauthorize a county position, and D, approval of the casualty policy with Princeton Excess and Surplus Lines Insurance Company. Item 9 is approval of the appointments of A, the county engineer, Mark Nara, B, the county medical examiner, Dr. Julie Briner, C, the county weed commissioner, Jared Jepson, and D, the county official newspapers. Item 10 is approval of various boards and commissions that are required at the first meeting of the year to receive. Item A is the Conservation Board. Cindy Bennett has agreed to stay on. Item B from Siouxland District Board of Health, Adam Lloyd is stepping down and Judy Turner is remaining on. And item C is commission to assess damages. Most of the people that we had a full slate, as you may remember, early last year. Most of the people have agreed to stay on by responses. I will note for Karen or whoever is compiling this list that you can mark yes for on category A. I see there's no response for Bradley Hopp or Eric Nelson. I spoke to Bradley Hopp and he's willing to stay on. And Supervisor Nelson spoke to his dad and he's also willing to stay on. Item 11 from the Board of Supervisors is simply to receive the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting from Government Finance Officers Association for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022. That letter is in the backup. We receive this quite often. Dennis, any insight on the history with this?
We've had about 9 years consecutive. We had 1 year we're off, and then we had about 11 more years, 13 years. So we
Okay,
received it's about 22 years.
good.
Yep.
So appreciate your work on that, Dennis. Item 12 from Secondary Roads includes A, consideration of resolution authorizing the county engineer to close roads for maintenance and emergencies during 2024. And B, consideration of resolution authorizing the county engineer to execute certification of completion of work of federal aid, state aid, and farm-to-market construction during 2024. I'll move the consent agenda.
Second.
Second by Taylor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 5-0. Item 13 from Secondary Roads, Mr. Mark Nara, for action is approval of a permit to work in the county right-of-way for the city of Sergeant Bluff.
Good morning. Mark Nair, Woodbury County Engineer. The permit for the city of Sergeant Bluff is for the construction of a bicycle trail along the side of Old Lakeport Road. This project's being done under a federal grant and a couple of state grants going along with it. It's going to be connecting the trails in Sioux City to the main trails in Sergeant Bluff. The work will be done on the west side of Old Lakeport Road. It does include crossing and adding a paved fillet to Ridge Road, which is half county, half city of Sioux City.
I'll move approval.
I'll second the motion by Radig. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 5-0. Thank you. Item 14 from the Board of Supervisors, Office Dennis Butler. For action is to approve amending the Baker Group agreement from $10,000 to $15,000 for assisting in ARPA funding requirements. They obviously assist in filing those required reports and spending categories. One thing to note, just right off the bat, is that even though this is for an increase, Dennis may cover this too, but we had engaged with UHY Consulting to assist in ARPA-related issues as well. We've only spent $9,775 of the $72,000 allocated, so we have over $62,000 that we have not spent, which is a small portion of that would be going to this, but I'll turn it over to you, Dennis.
Yes, we try to refrain from using UHY consultants for about the last 3 months because they basically answered all our major questions when we were first setting up all of our ARPA funding and obligating the funds. The only time we'd probably use them in the future here is if we have any audits by the Treasury Department, anything like that. Hopefully we don't. So moving 5,000 here, it'd still leave them 57,000, which hopefully we won't use. We might use some, but probably won't use very much of that at all. So we'll still have money left over in the long term, and we'll have to calculate that out before the end of 24, so we do get that money obligated before calendar year 24 is over.
So my question, I guess, on this issue, and I'm appreciative that we have the money to be able to do it. I always have trouble when we change a contract midstream and it says, well, I now need $5,000 more dollars. And I guess my question is, how are we allocating right now contractually the amount of money that Baker Group is spending?
We did amend that, it was originally 5,000, we did amend it 5,000, make it 10,000, so this will be a second amendment. Now, we don't have to use any of that 72 because we have unallocated funds and ARPA funds, and we could use the 5,000 if you want to leave the contract amount. That was up to 72,000. So they aren't even coming close to spending that much money, so why obligate money that we have unobligated now when you use this obligated money, transfer it over?
I guess my problem or my issue isn't the source of funding. It's what prevents them from coming back and saying, we're at 15,000, now we need another 5,000. You know, and are they keeping track? Do we have a list of time and material like you'd have in every other contract?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We can break it down by the hour, how many hours each claim is for, same with UHY. But I guess it's a matter of,
So
We
right
do-
now, they're at 100 hours.
who?
The Baker Group is at 100 hours currently, is that correct?
They have $100 left, yes. So it'd be 9,900 they're at currently.
And we,
$100 left.
and we get a breakdown of that, or we just assume that the
Oh,
money's
no, you get a
out?
breakdown of that. It's in
Where-
the claims every time,
Where is that available?
in the auditor's office.
Okay. I'm not gonna vote for this, nothing against the Baker Group, but it's hard for me to just rely on a company to say, we're up with the 10,000, now we need another 5, without having any backup. Any more than if they came back in 3 weeks and said, we're up with the 15,000, we need another 5. I just don't think that's the way we haven't done business any other way like that. So I'm not supportive at this time. I get that there's funds there for it, but I just think that seems pretty loose to me in terms of,
But it is in the claims, every claims you approve, there's a breakdown of that in the claims, so.
and I'm appreciative of that. I just don't think that any supervisor up here probably goes to the claims and writes down and keeps a log. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
that's just me. I might be in the minority on it.
Dennis, do you remember how it was increased from 5 to 10,000?
That was done back on August 22nd, and we did use ARPA funds by increasing the unobligated. It was 70, I believe it was 77, increased it to 82,000.
So we deobligated UHY Consulting total at that point.
At that point, you left it the same. We added 5,000 from unobligated ARPA funds, so we increased from 72 for professional fees to 82,000.
Okay.
But we
and
aren't increasing the 82, we're just taking 5,000 from UHY.
Your proposal is to take it from the UHY
Yes.
this time. And last time, that was not how it was done?
No, we took it from unobligated
Okay.
ARPA funds.
Okay.
Is there a reason we're using Baker Group over UHY?
Because right now, we know enough right now between Baker Group and myself we don't have to use them. And they
Okay.
don't care, but we may use them if there's ever an audit by the Treasury Department on any of our funds we spend.
So part of the reason to use UHY was the fact that it came with an insurance policy.
Yes, we had no clue what we were getting into.
So is there an insurance policy that comes with having,
No, there's no insurance policy. It's a
Yes.
contract.
right?
In an indirect way, yes, the insurance policy protects us if we do become audited through the U.S. Treasury on any of our obligations. But if we don't spend it, then it goes back in the unobligated, so we can obligate somewhere else. For the time being, I wouldn't do anything with it.
But UHY is aware of what
Yes,
we're doing,
yes,
correct?
yes.
Okay.
But to Keith's question, Keith, is your question, does the insurance writer or the policy that underwrites the Baker Group, is it the same as UHY? Do we have the same protections? Is that where you were going, or am I
Well,
misreading?
I'm just
What you're
saying,
asking.
are we using Baker to do what UHY was contracted to do?
Somewhat, yes.
And was your question, do
Well,
they
It's
have the
cheap,
same
it's cheaper
insurance
to
provisions?
use Baker Group than UHY.
Right.
By far, because they're $150 to $175 an hour. Where here we're paying $100 an hour. It makes sense.
Right, but part of the reason way back when we hired UHY was because they were going to be insured up to, what was it, $2 million? I mean, we had a number out there.
That's in the contract.
Yeah,
But they,
That's still gonna be in place.
they essentially greenlight the plan,
Yes.
correct? And Baker is filling out the actual, is it quarterly
Quarterly.
spending reports?
Quarterly. Yep,
Yeah.
per quarter. In fact, we gotta fill one out this month.
so is this enough to fulfill Baker doing this all the way till we're done with the grants? Or are we gonna have to come back and ask for
There's
more?
no guarantees, but I would assume it'd probably fulfill the whole thing.
Okay,
No guarantees, though. Depends what comes up.
sure.
So it's not more of a matter of Baker or UHY, but we're both kind of using both at the same time.
There's a potential we could if there's an audit.
If we don't approve this, what are the short-term ramifications of that?
He'll be done working with us.
Who will be done?
Baker Group,
They won't work for the county anymore as far as ARPA,
right,
and it'd have to go to UHY where there's unspent funds.
yes.
Yeah.
And that's $175 compared to 100, so it makes logic to go with Baker Group.
Or Dennis would do it, right?
We'll have to have assistance maybe from UHY.
Has there been issues working with Baker Group on these reports?
No. In fact, the hours are getting less and less as we keep going through this, so they may not even spend the 15,000. Because they only spend an hour, a couple hours every time unless an issue comes up.
Well, being as they're closely involved with a lot of the spending dollars that they're reporting on, I think it still makes sense given the savings. And we've realized that before. I mean, however we want to increase this, I mean, last time we probably could have gone up to 15, but we just decided for whatever reason not to. So I'll move approval.
Second.
Second by Radig. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Passes 4-1. Taylor opposed. Item 15 from Planning and Zoning. Mr. Priestley is coming up to introduce these topics and background. Item A is consideration of applicants and appointment of member to the Board of Adjustment for the new 5-year term of 2024 to 2028.
Good morning Supervisors. Dan Priestley, Zoning Coordinator, here to present that we've got the open position on the Board of Adjustment, a consequential board for many zoning decisions, applications such as conditional use permits and variances. We were fortunate to have a few candidates for these positions. The applicants are Daniel Hare and Jeffrey Hansen, who happen to be here today. So,
Is there an incumbent, so to speak, or?
yes, the incumbent is Daniel Hare.
Okay, and there's one position.
Yeah.
Okay. And Mr. Hanson has applied in the past, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions for Dan on the applications themselves before we speak to the applicants? Okay. We have the applications in our backup. Thank you both for coming to a meeting that's at a different time for this meeting. Like to invite you both up one by one and give a short introduction. Anything we can't really sense from your application maybe, and then we might have questions for you, or it might be enough. So invite one of you up. Maybe Daniel Hare, since he's first on the list here.
Okay, my name is Daniel Hare, 2889 Humboldt Avenue, Hornick, Iowa. You guys are familiar with me, I think. I've served on the Board of Adjustment since 2020, and at that time, I was appointed by you guys just to fulfill 3 years of a 5-year term from a resigning director. So I haven't served a full term, but during those 3 years, I have been able to have the privilege of chairing the Board of Adjustment, and I have enjoyed that. I believe, I'd have to check with staff on this, but I believe I have not missed a meeting, especially since chairing it. I think that's very important to have excellent attendance, at those meetings so everything works seamlessly in the county. Something that I think might help me be qualified for this position would be the fact that I am the Vice President of the Woodbury County Farm Bureau. I believe the interactions I have with fellow Woodbury County residents, as well as the meetings we have with our county and state officials, keep me well informed of the day-to-day activities in Woodbury County. Also, my residence in rural Woodbury County keeps me front and center in all of the challenges and benefits of living outside the incorporated areas in Woodbury County. This unique perspective I have has allowed me to run the Board of Adjustment meetings with an open mind and an efficient manner, and I'm looking forward to serving for a full 5-year term if you guys allow me to.
And how long have you chaired?
I've chaired actually for 2 terms, but the first term we only had a handful of meetings, and so I was reelected the following year to chair since the board felt that I didn't get a very long chair.
These are annual terms.
Correct.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Hare?
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hanson?
Good morning, Jeff Hansen, 1623 Eastland Avenue, Lawton. As you mentioned, I did apply for this position last year as well, and so I saw an opening come up this year and decided to throw my name in the hat as well. I was not aware that the current chair was reapplying as well, so I guess I'll give you a little bit of background, but I'd also throw out that understanding the importance of having the incumbent apply, that I would withdraw my application for the Board of Adjustment and just focus on the Planning and Zoning Commission, if that makes your decision easier. While I'm up here, I'll just give a little bit of background. In my previous employment with the City of Sioux City for 18 years, I was the Community Development Operations Manager. I also served in 2 additional roles volunteering in the county. One of those, the Lawton Fire Department for 17 years, and then also the Planning Section Chief for the Woodbury County Emergency Operations Center for 15 years. So I believe my experience on either one of the boards or the commission would be beneficial with not only my employment experience, but also my involvement in the county and also residing in rural Woodbury County. Any questions?
I think we may have asked you this earlier, but between the two, Board of Adjustment and Zoning Commission, what are your thoughts just generally on your role in
Sure.
either one?
I think my preference, if I was asked to choose either role, it would be the Planning and Zoning Commission. I feel that with my experience on the Planning and Zoning Commission as a staff member at the City of Sioux City, I have experience facilitating that commission, and that I would do well in there, and I have the time to be able to commit to make sure that I'm available at all the meetings and participate in every decision.
I think we have 2 excellent candidates, and we had this issue with the Veterans Affairs Commission most recently, but given your preference for the other and the deference, which is appreciated
Yep.
in terms of having the Board of Adjustment chair running again, I would move Daniel Hare, but want to take your comments definitely into consideration for the upcoming vote.
Sounds good.
I'll second the motion by Taylor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 5-0. Thank you. Item B is the same, but for the zoning commission, if I could just invite you back up.
Yeah, I would just like to add that the zoning commission, of course, plays a very consequential role in development and recommendations of county policy, ordinance development, subdivisions, et cetera. And again, it's a 5-member panel that each year an appointment becomes open. So just a little general background.
Yes, very consequential. Terms are longer than supervisors. There's a lot of decentralized government in these commissions, so it's very helpful to have people that, more applicants than positions, I think. Speaks well of the community. With that, can I invite Mr. Hanson back up as applicant for this? Anything you didn't note yet?
No additional information.
Any questions specific to zoning?
I don't really have any questions, but, you know, obviously, working with Jeff over at Sioux City, you know, very knowledgeable in everything related to zoning and law, and very dedicated and hardworking employee, and, you know, I don't get a chance to throw out too many compliments to people you meet and know, so, you know, I would say he'd be a great fit, and, you know, not knowing who else is on the application here, or, you know, not hearing from them yet, you know, I just wanted to throw that out there, that he was an excellent staff person to work with, and always knew what was going on, and had it in his head rather than having to look it up every time, so that's always impressive.
Thank you. Do you have a specific goal in mind, and how would this relate or complement your job at McClure?
So my current position with McClure Engineering in Sioux City, I've been here approximately just over a year after I left the city of Sioux City. I don't see any conflict of interest. If there are any conflict of interest, I would disclose those as it relates to any projects that would be brought forward in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission. I have worked with Daniel on a few projects within my employment side. Again, I would declare conflict of interest if those were ever to arise during a meeting agenda. I guess my goal is to continue to serve as a resident of Woodbury County, and to try to speak for those that reside in Woodbury County. I know there's a lot of issues that have been discussed recently, and I know a lot of those have been resolved, and I know others may be brought forward in the future, but I'd like to be a part of those discussions and listen to the folks as far as what their stance is, and bring those forward to the commission.
What do you think the biggest issue coming up is going to be?
I think it would be alternative energy, more than likely. Any revisions to the wind energy, also solar, I know has been a big discussion between those items. Obviously, the carbon dioxide pipeline has been a big discussion item, not just in Woodbury County, but just in Northwest Iowa in general. And so I can see that. I'm not aware of any major amendments coming forward from Daniel or the staff as relates to the zoning code, but I'd be open for discussion, you know, those items as well.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry.
On the subject of alternative energy and these CO2 pipelines, largely a lot of that influence is coming from out of county or out of state parties. How do you plan to try to, if appointed, how do you
Sure.
plan to separate out that influence versus what the folks here in Woodbury County are asking of you? And I understand too that, you know, we are an elected body, and you know, the zoning board, Board of Adjustment is not, so we're always sensitive to, you know, how we would respect people's rights, but that would be my one question to you.
I guess, you know, my initial comment would be I would respect the rights of the property owners first, before any out-of-county, out-of-state business transactions that may be requested that would, you know, reflect alternative energy ordinances. So again, I would respect property rights first, and I feel like I've done that in the past with my previous role at the city of Sioux City and respecting those property rights, and so I would continue that on this commission as well.
And I'd just like to thank you for submitting your name. You had a tough slate last year
Yep.
on both appointments, and you kind of got a tough slate again, but I know that we haven't met, but we've got a lot of mutual friends. And
Yes, we do.
I've heard nothing but good things, so,
Okay,
but I
thank
appreciate you throwing your name in the hat.
Thanks. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Mr. David McWilliams?
Good morning, Dave McWilliams, 1563 Buchanan Avenue. I've been a lifelong resident of Sioux City. I retired from the city in 2007 after 37 years. Of the 37 years, I was airport operations manager for 30 years. I am a past member of the zoning commission back in 2008 and helped rewrite the zoning commission laws and stuff.
What was the biggest takeaway from serving as chairman for a year? You mentioned that.
I mean, I was honored to begin with, and we really didn't have anything too controversial. I think we did a pretty good job of being a buffer between the zoning and the supervisors.
Any questions from Anything you want to add?
Nope, I think that's about it.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Our next applicant is Mr. Jeffrey O'Toole.
Jeff O'Toole, 1466 140th Street. I also filled part of a zoning commission term in 2020, end of 2020, and then I guess I'm up for my first reappointment opportunity. It's been an honor to serve. I work in healthcare. My kids go to law and school. It's been interesting serving the community and serving the county, trying to protect landowner rights, but also respect the comprehensive plan that was placed by people many years ago. And seemed like there's very good candidates here. Mr. Hanson seems to have excellent resume compared to myself, but I'm happy to serve if it's appropriate. So
Sorry, what was that?
I'm happy to serve if it's appropriate.
Well, we appreciate that. Is there any questions?
Any takeaways from serving, challenges or anything?
I mean, the challenges of things moving at a snail's pace at times, but also being respectful and doing due diligence. The solar work we've been doing here lately, trying to come up with, what's the right thing for the county to support green energy, but also landowner rights and neighbors' rights if they're opposed to it. It's been a joy going through some of that.
All right, I don't think we have anything else, so
Thank
thank you again. Any board discussion?
I think we're, if I may, I think we're again in the predicament where we have good people, good applicants, certainly qualified and that bring a lot of experience. So just appreciative that people still want to serve in these roles and positions. We know they're not highly paid or paid at all. But I guess I'm appreciative of Jeff Hanson putting his name in the hat before, and then the stick-to-itiveness as well as the expertise and some of the professional qualities he brings to the table, not only in his private line of work, but also in his public line with the city. So that would be my preference, but that's not, again, anything against the other applicants at all, because I think they have a lot of great qualities, so.
And I would second what Mr. Taylor says. However, talking with a lot of folks that have been interacting with the zoning commission, I've heard nothing but great things about Mr. O'Toole and his level-headedness and his willing to work and how he methodically approaches and does his work. And I know you guys have had a lot of meetings this year, and you've done a very nice job, and I've had nothing but great comments in your regard. So obviously I'm one vote, but again, we've got some very good applicants here, and that's what makes this job tough. On one hand, I can definitely see where you guys have been working on the solar thing. You've been working on the carbon dioxide pipeline for quite some time. And so Mr. Toole's reappointment would not require any bringing up to speed, I guess, as opposed to Mr. Hanson. Although I think Mr. Hanson also has a lot of great qualities and attributes that I think he could bring to that commission. So I think it's a very tough decision for myself, so.
Yeah, I think there's perhaps heavier issues coming down the pike for the zoning commission, and the experience, varied and extensive as it is for Mr. Hanson, I think it would be a net benefit. Any other discussion?
I guess no offense to those that have also served in the past, but, with knowing Jeff and, like you said, coming back a second time and doing that effort and work, I'll go ahead and move Jeff Hanson.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by Bittinger. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 5-0. Thank you all once again. Item C is approval of construction evaluation resolution relating to construction permits for large animal confinement operations.
Yes, this is a yearly resolution that we bring to the board to continue the.
I'll go ahead and move it.
Oops.
I'll second the motion by Raddick, but if you had anything else you wanted to add?
It just creates the partnership between the county and the DNR so we can scrutinize those master matrix applications.
Strictly ministerial. Hearing no other discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 5-0. Item 16 from the Board of Supervisors, Mr. Taylor for information. This is regarding veterans' ability to record DD 214s.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I see that we have Lisa from our Veterans Affairs Commission. So this is an important thing for those who are released from active duty and as they go through veterans' periods of service. A DD 214 is basically all the awards and periods of service that you have. And so became aware, Lisa sent out an email. And Lisa, would you mind coming forward? Because I know that you like the spotlight and you like to talk publicly, but there is a third party that is charging people to get their DD 214s and then promising to record them. And the recorder's office contacted you all that they had received 4 DD 214s from this company. And when the DD 214 is recorded, they have to send them back to the company, and 2 were already recorded at the courthouse. Can you talk about a little bit why this issue would be important to veterans and the process that should normally be done?
I'm trying to figure out, because we worked with Joshua on how to word things, because there was another county that got a cease and desist letter. So this was all run through the county attorney, so we're covered. There are outside, I don't know how to put this. Some people are getting charged for their DD 214s. It does not cost anything to get a DD 214. So, like I said, I'm trying to word this so we don't get in trouble. When someone else orders a DD 214 for someone, they send it directly to the recorder's office. A person can come into our office, or they can simply go online themselves and order their DD 214 and take it into the recorder's office and get it recorded at no cost. And we just kind of sent this out. This is becoming we've had quite a few people do that. And just to kind of let people know, it doesn't cost anything to get them.
So if I understand what's happening, there's a private third-party company that says, for whatever, I'm not even going to make up a number, but for this amount of dollars, we'll take care of this, we'll make sure to have it recorded and so on. And our point, and the reason that I wanted this to be on the agenda and state it publicly, is that it doesn't cost anything. And so this company, potentially, or allegedly, is asking to take this and help assist a veteran who simply could come down to the recorder's office and have his or her DD 214 recorded.
Yes,
And that's it.
yes.
And so it's kind of a superfluous charge that people are saying, oh, that's great. I can, for whatever dollars, I can get my DD 214 recorded. You can come down here and it'll be done for free.
Yes.
And that's pretty much the major takeaway that I had from your email.
Yes, and in Iowa, every county has an office like ours. So you can go to, Woodbury County, like Danbury, they could go to Monona. It's not going to be any charge. And there are some DD 214s that have been recorded that are currently recorded at the courthouse anyway. So, and the bad thing is, then the recorder's office has to send them back to this outside, this private group. And like when we order a DD 214, we have it come to our office, we take it over, get it recorded, bring it back, call the veteran.
And how much does that cost?
nothing.
Right. So I'm appreciative of your coming. I'm appreciative of your putting together this document, Fees for Military Records. It would be no different than anybody in this room being told, for $25, I can come and bring you to the Board of Supervisors meeting and show you where to sign in. So that's free too. So thank you for what you all do. Thank you for helping bring this issue to light, and I appreciate you.
Yep, thank you.
And with that $25 fee, we'd probably even cover the parking, so it'd come out way ahead.
I was gonna say, I'm willing to charge anybody $100 to pick them up and bring them here and help them sign in, so.
Well, then the next agenda item is going to be about you.
Well, I'll say this, Chairman, with Supervisor Taylor, I agree, thank you for bringing this up. This is very important because my father was a veteran, he passed away 10 years ago, but we had organizations like this contact my family, trying to do different things to veterans and have us spend superfluous money, and it makes me very upset that we have organizations doing this to veterans. And a lot of them, you're right, they don't have a lot of money, or in our, on our fixed incomes. And so I've just seen some of this firsthand, and so I agree. It's just a shame to treat our veterans like that. And so, thank you.
Since the press release, has the number increased? It was 4 received and 2 were already recorded at the courthouse. You can just say yes or no.
Since it just went out.
Or maybe you do need to come up. Sorry.
Since it just went out, we haven't really seen anything yet, but I sent it to Board of Supervisors, sent it to every newspaper in the county, sent it to all the Legion posts, sent it to the cities and the towns, so we're trying to get it covered, because the bad thing is, yes, there are older people and a family, and I just know this from experience, family member passes away, they're a veteran. You want them to get military honors. I have no idea where their DD 214 is. Oh, we'll contact this company, we can get it from them. They can call the funeral homes around here are very good at contacting our office and contacting the recorder's office. So if a family member passes away and that's what you need it for, tell the funeral home, contact our office, contact the recorder's office, they'll be able to tell you it's recorded.
Has the media asked you who this company is?
No.
Are they a large company that you're working with legal to go about it the right way?
Like I said, there's a county who sent a letter out and they named the company and everything, and they got a cease and desist letter. So we got the letter they sent and sent it to Joshua to
Okay.
go over, to make sure there's nothing, no way anybody could come back on us.
Okay. The county got a cease and desist.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that other county,
Yes, that
that
other county.
named the company and
Yep,
maybe alleged something.
Oh, okay.
yep. They said the
Okay.
company's name.
Yep.
They said what they were doing.
Okay.
They got a cease and desist letter from this company's lawyers, so we thought, okay, we'll
But we
get
can
it.
unequivocally say, if anyone allegedly does this, it's wrong.
It's Joshua's fault if we named anybody wrong. Since he's not here to defend himself.
So we do have a couple members of the media, far be it from us to tell you what to cover, but this is I think a good thing that could be out there. Since 9/11, think about this, we have members that are deploying for the 4th and 5th time, and you also have young people who weren't even alive then, and we're still in this broader conflict. So military op tempo is not getting any less in the next few years. I think that's safe to say. So we'll continue to see issues like this, and
And
appreciate it.
even, it's very easy, the guard members. You come down, generally would get them within 24 hours. If they're served, like, in Iowa, because I can just send them down to Camp Dodge. I've even gotten them within an hour. So there's a lot of guard members, not only their NGB 22s, but their DD 214s. We can get their points letters. We can get their retirement letters. And under 24 hours, we can get them.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other discussion? All right, move on to item 17, reports on committee meetings. I'll just say in that vein, committee assignments just continue as is until hopefully next week, when the assignments are on the agenda. And do let me know soon if there's any requested changes, please. Anyone have any reports?
With the emergency management, I had to phone in for that, so I was more in listening mode. I know Sheriff Sheehan was there, but we basically received informationally the hazardous mitigation plan, or introduced the Assistant Emergency Management Director, John Holmes, and I do see Scott, sorry, over there as well. They're redoing the website, connecting resources, talked about the wealth of intellectual and physical vocational talent and capabilities, doing spot reports, meteorologists, people who have nuclear science engineering degrees, and save over $7,470 through those who are willing to maybe say, I'm not going to be a volunteer firefighter, but I could, help with radio comms or carpentry. So that was really good. Did give a budget overview. Over $144,000 in reserves. There is a $43,000 increase due to the second position. We did talk about an increase for the emergency management director. It was debated back and forth. These positions are applied for knowing what that salary is, and yet inevitably people compare across the other counties. So there was a healthy increase that was given, but I think it was, and Scott, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think it was the tone and tenor that this is probably the one bite at the apple, and then in future years, it'll be more along the lines of cost of living increases and so on, in line with what everybody else is getting. Is that a fair summation, or did I?
Yeah, Scott Mitchell. I am mayor of Hornick and director of, or head of the Commission for Emergency Management. It was a lengthy discussion, but it's because looking back into counties, with the history we've had of emergency management, when it was created, in the past 10 years, that, that position's always been underfunded and been short a person. And the goal was to bring it up. It originally was submitted not to be as large, but the commission, with the lengthy discussion, said if we bring it to this, then it will be a cost of living raise from now on to get that up to what it is, considering the other counties in Iowa and what Mr. Montino does do.
So that was approved unanimously, and then in future years, I think it'll be the cost
It'll be
of
a lot
living.
more easier and more streamlined. The goal was to get it to where it's following what the county is doing per year for raises. And with this increase, and that creates that, and that sets that precedent to do it that way.
And the only other thing I would add is that Mike has received a level of certification that is nearly unparalleled. And you can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but the certifications that he now has, I think you could put up against.
Yes, Mike carries a bachelor's. Yes, bachelor's degree of emergency management, and he's got looking at certifications, different certifications of emergency management in the state of Iowa and in the United States to help emergency management in Woodbury County. The problem with emergency management is you don't need them till you need them. But then when you need them, all his ducks better be in a row, because if they're not, county's not getting any money, and, you're out of that FEMA money. And he has to keep all that in order every year. It's a lot more than people think when you sit down and look at it. I didn't realize until we had used it in Hornick in 19 how much there does exist there that you have to keep up and maintain.
Thank you, Scott.
Yep.
That's all I had.
Okay. Anyone else?
I gave an update a couple weeks ago from relating to Starcom with the emergency text management system to our first responders, that they were having continued issues down in the communities of Hornick and Sloan and Salix and such. We got an email Friday before Christmas that Motorola had instituted some new repairs, and that they had gone at that time, 2 weeks without a glitch in the system or without any reports of issues, which is good news. We're going to continue to monitor that, and obviously, any of those responders that are having issues, and if it happens again, please let myself or Wendy Hess or any of those folks know, so we can continue to make sure that those systems are working properly. Secondly, there is an LEC meeting this afternoon just to approve one claim. I will be phoning into that one, but it'll be here at 2 o'clock upstairs, so it will be a very brief meeting. Thank you.
Well, now you jinxed it. Any other committee reports? All right, item 18, any citizen concerns for item not already addressed on the agenda? Would anyone like to give citizen concerns? Okay. Item 19, board concerns. Yes, Mr. Taylor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just wondered on the January 11th meeting, which is what I think was originally proposed in terms of the St. Louis Drainage District, is that something that I can work with you in terms of having a public meeting on January 11th in this room at 5, open to the public and with the mayor of Salix? And is that something that others would want to attend? No obligation at all. I'm willing to be a conduit, no pun intended, but if that's something that a majority would want to, we'd need to know, so we publish it. I don't think it's necessarily something that we have to have as a Board of Supervisors meeting, but I thought I'd bring it up now.
I didn't anticipate it being a Board of Supervisors meeting, and it was always suggested to be in the courthouse, or did you initially say Salix?
We had talked about Salix, but I think in the courthouse would be just as good. I don't think there was a great impetus to have it elsewhere, and I think we could use the screens and people know where it's at.
Were you thinking about 5 in Salix initially, and the time is?
I was thinking about 5 here.
Right.
Just because people, we saw, and I think you were out at that time, but I think we had 42 people attend at a 4:30 meeting, so I thought they could make it for 4:30, and that was, they'll probably be able to make it for 5.
Sure.
Stay ahead of dinner.
Mr. Priestley, do we have any boards or commissions you're aware of meeting in this room on the 11th?
Not on the 11th. The commission will be using the room on the 17th on a Wednesday night, and then on the 22nd. So,
Okay.
both at 5 o'clock.
I mean, you do pretty much have to have the chair's permission, though, for a meeting in the courthouse, and the time frame at 5 PM, that would have to be for security to know and everything, too, so.
Is there any consideration from courthouse security? No? This is you handle boards and commissions at this time on other dates, so do you have an estimate on, well, we saw the interest, so I don't know if you have an estimate on the amount of time.
I could talk to Patrick. I'd like to keep it to an hour, hour and a half, and have, instead of just open dialogue and, anybody have a plan, and you get 42 different ones, have them present, here are 3 alternatives, and here are the considerations of why. I'm suggesting this and get some input so that when it comes back before us, the goal is, we're not gonna have everybody be happy, but if you can reach that 95% mass, and then those who aren't, you say, well, at least it's livable. So that's my thought.
Okay. Joshua, would you mind nodding yes or no if I'm okay to make some sort of a determination as the chair, not relying on board consent or approval on this question without running afoul of deliberation?
Joshua Woodman, County Attorneys. If you're just talking about giving the go-ahead to schedule the meeting for that time, I think that's something that can be done during board concerns as ministerial.
Okay. Thank you. I'm covered. So if you know there's a timetable you need to stick to, maybe make that somewhat clear. So we're not having security at 8 o'clock,
Yeah.
you know.
We'll try to limit ourselves. If we go past 2 hours, then maybe tell people it's gonna be another meeting then, but,
Or just have it outside.
yeah,
Yeah.
Supervisor Taylor, I'll be there.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be there, so.
great.
I've got another meeting that night, so most likely, if I would come, it'd be on the tail end. So
Okay.
Well, this would be something we'd publish notice for anyway, right? It's a public meeting, so.
If there's 3,
There's 3 of us.
otherwise it's just it's not a board meeting.
Yeah, I would say notice of gathering, unless I'm corrected publicly.
Well, and the reason I'm not sitting up there is because I have to run to a hearing shortly. But I would hesitate to post it as a Board of Supervisors meeting, given the quasi judicial role that the board has in making the determination on the drainage district. You certainly can come and observe, and there's no problem with that. If there's going to be a quorum of the board, then a notice of gathering. But we need to make it clear it's not a Board of Supervisors meeting, and it's not a time for the supervisors to gather evidence on the petition. It should be driven by the engineer and answering questions that the public might have and putting the plan out there. But it's not a Board of Supervisors meeting, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd see it as an individual's town hall, if you will, and Salix was the concept, and it's just being moved here, so there's no reason I'd have to oppose it happening.
I think we may be safer if it's just 2 of us. Would that be a correct assumption? And then we stay out of having to publish that we're a quorum or notice of gathering, any of that. And I'm not going to take any different tack than I did when I went out for the solar and with planning and zoning, and I was basically in listening mode and gave a factual answer to a question and then sat down because I agree, it's not ours to drive, it's ours to listen and provide the format and forum for.
Yeah, any summary would be helpful to make sure we're concise with our future meetings. Any other board concerns?
I would just like to say thank you to Chairman Hung and Supervisor Vice Chairman Bittinger for throwing their names in the hat. I was asked to consider both these. I did consider them. My appointment on the LEC is a lot of work. It's been a lot of work since I got on there in September. And one of the things that I did right away is I got Chairman Hung involved with the LEC as best as we could. So we had 2 members of this body helping with the flow of information. About the same time I was appointed, Supervisor Bittinger, I think, has attended every LEC meeting since then. And one of my concerns was if I served in that capacity that we would lose some of that exchange of information between the LEC and the Board of Supervisors. And I've got full faith and confidence in both these guys. And so I appreciate their throwing their names in the hat, and we'll continue to work on the jail and march forward. And I appreciate you 2 being involved, coming to meetings, and being involved in correspondence. And I believe that we're doing a much better job relaying information to the public and being transparent and implementing the changes that need to be made. And so that was really a large part of my consideration, and look forward to another successful year working with all of you. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad you brought that up because you have been thrown in the fire, so to speak, with that assignment that can only be done by you, by the rules. So appreciate you being here because we need that representation. And for the board's cooperativeness overall, I think we're all trying to make sure that we turn the cogs of government effectively as much as we can as a group. Any other board concerns? All right, we'll move on to the meat and potatoes of the first quarter of this year. This is item 20 for information is state of the budget presentation by Dennis Butler before we take on some of the relatively simple budget items as we traditionally do in the first meeting of the year, rather than get into the heavy stuff. So Dennis, walk us through the memo you provided here and be prepared for questions.
Your mic?
You want me to go ahead and just read the memo and then stop me when you have questions that we go through? The memo's in each of your budget books on the front page, so you can follow through here.
Yeah, just briefly explain what you wrote.
Okay. This memo's purpose is to provide the Board of Supervisors an overall view of the proposed Woodbury County budget for fiscal year '25. These will be challenging times, and inflation is currently at 3.1%. Reference last year is 7.1%, and new expenses will be rising due to the new law enforcement center. The county has a bond rating of AA3, which is close to AAA, which helped in county in receiving lower interest rates on their bond issues and future CIP loans. The county will get through this without major changes in services provided to the citizens of Woodbury County. Included in this memo are schedules that summarize the proposed fiscal year '25 budget by fund, proposed tax asking, and projected tax rates. So the first section there, you can kind of look at it. This has incorporated a 3% increase. There's been some changes in how we fund certain items. So all in all, actual appropriations have not increased a whole lot, with the exception of general supplemental. And
For clarification, Dennis, 3% increase on wages?
Yes, all wages, elected, deputies, wage
Okay,
plan, and
and
unions.
this is a placeholder pending board action on the wage plan and such?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So you can see the totals there. We can go to the next page. The big increases in general supplemental and debt service, even though the appropriations don't show it, it's because of funding mechanisms, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. Okay, we go to the second page, proposed tax asking breakdown by fund. To keep in line with House File 718, the general basic fund will go up in tax askings by $704,510. Now I'll skip down to the next proposed tax rate. So even though that increase in tax asking will result in a 7.6 cents decrease in our current tax rate. General sup, we're increasing that by $1,799,674. Because that'll be explained here in the next section as I go through it. That's an increase of 19.592 cents per thousand. You come to debt service, that's an increase of 1,177,777, which results in a 14.491 cents increase in tax rate. So your countywide tax rate, as proposed, without any influx of reserves, anything, is 26.449. In the rural basic, you have an actual increase of 87,568. That's in line with the House File 718, which will result in a 4.827 cents per thousand tax decrease. So with that all said there, the countywide, as it's currently presented, would be 26.449 cents increase. The rural townships would be 21.622% increase because of rural basic going down, that decreases their countywide levy.
What was the starting tax rate increase at the beginning of the last fiscal year? Do you
Okay, that
remember?
would be in column 1 fiscal year tax rate under proposed tax rates. Those are our tax rates currently. Total 7.13499 countywide, and then rural township is 9.59616.
No, what I mean is the last budget process, we started with a shortfall again. Do you remember what that was in the
that-
tax rate?
That I do not have. I can get that provided, but we did use, to hold the line on taxes there, we did use 4.5 million approximately of reserves, either out of our general basic reserves or as a result of the farm sale, 2.5 million. We don't have that this coming year. We funded some departments out of gaming and local option. And also we had a reduction of 670,000 on district health. All these budget numbers represent what would be needed in taxes without reference to any other funds being used at this point in time.
And that total is,
On tax asking?
is that the 3.7?
Yes. The bulk of that is a result of general sup and debt service.
Ms. Taylor?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So I've got a few questions, if that's okay.
Yep. Oh, absolutely.
One, can we, to Chairman Ung's question, could we get the breakdown from last year, and it would simply be pulling up the backup material for FY '24 as far as tax rates that would show what we started with as far as the gap? And then I think for the last 8 years, we've done a PowerPoint each time where we've had, this is what our gap is. So it'd be 26.449 cents and 21.622 cents. And then as we've gone each week and made changes, then we've seen where that's gone down with the goal of what was stated at the beginning of the meeting, getting to a zero tax
Right.
levy rate increase. Can we
Yeah.
do that again
We
and
can do that
anticipate
again. The only
that?
exception would be on the additional taxes on new growth. That will not be this year.
If I could just interrupt real quick.
Yes.
I'm not sure it's going to be as helpful to do the tally sheet idea because we have to stay within certain parameters by taxing fund, right?
Correct.
So if we're just looking at the tallies overall, it doesn't say how close we are to following the laws on general basic and general sup.
My only rejoinder to that would be, at the end of the day, the firefighter, nurse, or farmer, teacher doesn't really care about general sup, general basic, rural basic. They care about what the levy rate is. And so what we've done here is shift. Would you agree with that? We've shifted a lot to general supplemental because it's unlimited and there was kind of a loophole that the legislature admittedly left. So at the end of the day, to me, it doesn't matter because nobody's going to open up their tax bill and say, wow, general sup really went down and general basic.
Right,
I just
right.
care about what is the effective tax rate. And so,
But we have to still match up revenue sources in general basic, whether they're reserves or new revenues, to stay within the requirements that we didn't have before.
Correct. General basic, rural basic, there's nothing you can do about that.
And that's not easy to explain to the
Right. Even though
Joe Q
there's-
public that, we have this tally, why can't you just decrease another 3 cents? Well, do you have any ideas on how to pay for general basic law enforcement without new revenues? I mean, how do we, that's why we might have to take them up by fund, but maybe we can still have a tally. I just wanted people to understand that there's a new,
Services always cost more money. There's no way around that, whether it's taxes or new revenues or reserves. Reserves are your last resort because all they are is Band-Aids, just pushing it to the next year. But in the case of general basic, the 74,000, there's nothing we can do about that because you definitely don't want to go lower because you're going to get penalized the following year by a lower base because they use the current base for next year. So that's the lowest, 704,510. That's there. The same thing with rural basic, that's there. You don't want to mess with those on tax asking because you're just hurting yourself in future years. Now, there's ways to balance this thing out in general basic by use of other funds, revenues, cuts, reserves, things like that. That's the easy part. The second part, general sup, you can use general basic reserves over to general sup because everything's funded in general sup. If we hadn't reached the 350 cap, would go back into general basic fund. So in checking the higher ups than me, you can use general basic funds to cover some of that general sup of 1.799 million. That you can do. But remember, that's a Band-Aid. Where do you find $1.7 million or $1.8 million next year, next year, next year? Because you're keeping your tax base the same for every year thereafter, that you can't make it up unless you keep funding it with other funds and taxes. That's the problem in that one, and we'll explain that here as we go through. Same way debt service, that's up because the 1.2 million that we don't even have this year, but it's budgeted to reduce taxes. That's gonna be funneled now back to general basic to make the general basic balance out with federal revenue. So yeah, this year debt service is gonna be up 1.177777 tax asking, it'll be up. Now, there is possibilities if we get more money than we anticipate, we could use that, if we know that before, say, June 15th, when they certify our taxes back, if we know we're gonna get more than 3.2 million in general base, say we're gonna get 4 million, we could take that extra money, put it back over into debt service, reduce that tax rate, but we have up till, I say June 1st, because they got June 15th, they certify it back to us. That's a possibility. There's a lot of possibilities to this whole budget that we can use, but we gotta be careful when you use reserves or other funds, gaming that we don't trap ourselves in reducing the tax rate down to hold it down, because this is reoccurring every year. It's not going away.
Okay, well, I want to make it clear that we likely will use some measure of reserves.
Yes.
And that is going to be warranted because we have had unfilled positions in different departments that are a one-time increase to that balance. It's not necessarily unreasonable to use some. So
Yes,
that's
totally
going to
agree.
provide some of the bridge, but in these numbers, Dennis, what number did you plug in our budget books for federal revenues for the jail?
3.2 million.
Okay,
And that's less than 100 prisoners a day, starting July 1st to June 30th, and the sheriff would like to get that number at least, if not more.
That's 3.2 million for FY '25?
Yes.
and.
Nothing going into debt service. We need it all in general basic because we're limited on our levy.
And we have not yet paid the 1.2 million that is due because of the budgets for that last year that didn't come to fruition because of the delay.
Correct. I'm gonna have to come to the board probably May 1st or before to ask permission to use 1.2 million of our current cash reserves to fund
So
this.
that'll be after the budget process.
Yes.
We'll have to come up with a 1.2.
Yep.
And did you tell me earlier that that's going to represent approximately a 3% decrease in the general basic reserve level?
Yes. Yes.
So we're at currently 29%, or is it higher now?
It'll be higher when we get to the end of '24 because of all these unspent funds.
Okay.
I gave an estimate
So
on that.
we're
as
still
well.
going to be in the high 20s, which is among the highest we've been, again.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
And if I could just say, I got three things. One, I agree with you on the general basic, where we're limited on the levy rate there, but we're not on general sup. To your point, we can use reserves to help general supplemental.
Yes,
And so this going up 19.59 cents is not necessary if we did, and we would still be able to have an effective tax rate. 29% is extremely high. I mean, we've talked about 22%. We've even gone lower than 20%. And I guess my
We've
one.
gone to
rej-
13.
You're right. I guess my one rejoinder to Dennis would be, we're facing this $1.2 million hole because we have a jail that's not built. No fault of, that's just a reality. When asked, well, what are you going to do in the future? Have a jail that's built. And as much confidence as we have with the LAC authority saying to taxpayers, you're not going to be, responsible for these delays by whatever entities. We're going to go back after those monies. We do have a revenue source in the future to make taxpayers whole without going back to them. And I just want to make sure I say publicly, I'm not saying this is the panacea, just go to reserves. We have to do a lot of hard work, local option sales tax, gaming, budget decisions. But I do think with a 29% reserve, when typically we've been at 20 to 22%, we've got a lot of, I think, understanding that we can use in order to help taxpayers and to make the commitment that was made at the
but
beginning
you
of the
gotta
meeting.
remember, you can only use so much reserves because all they are is Band-Aids. What do you do the next year? We won't have the reserves the next year. This is a 5-year plan with this.
Yeah, I
House-
think we're getting off topic right now because the Band-Aid, so to speak, is enlarged.
Yes.
It's not the same Band-Aid. Last year, it looks like we started with a shortfall of 4.2 million, and we had 1.66 in new tax revenue growth. What did you say we have in new growth this year?
This year, we would have had, instead of 704,000, we would have had, if we could have levied against the new valuations, we'd have had an additional 418,000 more than a million or 704,000. So we would have had that. That would have eliminated some of this 704,000, but we don't have that.
So we're dealing with less than half of the tax revenue growth that we dealt with last year
Yes,
because of these changes.
yes.
And
The only
that's
place we
not-
use, go ahead.
That's not something we can actively recoup from new construction.
No.
And that's part of the reason we had the roundtable.
And that's part of the law. We mentioned that at the roundtable, that they didn't allow us to use new valuation, brand new valuation. They didn't allow us to do that, where in the past we had.
Okay. So,
I'm going to ask a smart aleck question of you, Dennis. So why do we want to build anything new in this county?
Do what now?
What's the benefit of building anything new in this county ever again if this law stays? You see what I'm saying? I mean, we could have all kinds of development and we get almost no benefits of it from it.
Yeah, you could have a $500 million plant, go up, say, in Sioux City somewhere, or south of Sioux City in Woodbury County. We can't use it. The only place we can use is debt service. And that's where we'd borrow money for, say, if we had to do infrastructure, things like that, we'd borrow the money through TIF. Because it'd be major, it'd be over $1 million or probably more. Such as the new interstate interchange coming up. That could range anywhere from 28 million down to as low as 8 million, depends on grants. That's why we've hired a grant consultant on that. But no, we do not get the benefit of new construction.
the,
You just see how I mean, and I hope the public's listening. You see how regressive that is?
It is regressive.
Totally regressive.
Because how do you furnish its services to this $500 million plant, such as additional possible law enforcement, roads? There's a lot of things involved.
I guess if we want to save some money, we can, because, you know, we don't need any new growth anymore, so I guess we'll just cut out planning and zoning, and we'll just cut out any economic development stuff, and we'll just stay in eternity at where we are right now. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I'm sorry, I mean nothing to this, I'm just making a joke, but it's ridiculous, and it's totally regressive, and.
It is.
Well, and it also forces county, right? You can only use that new growth in debt service. It forces more debt.
You go to a county like
Which
Dallas.
it forces counties in debt, which.
You go to Dallas County, where they have huge growth down there. Now they're stymied for their regular service they got to provide because they can't use a new valuation. Makes no sense whatsoever, but we're getting off track a little bit here, but you're right.
but
Yeah, and I apologize, but I just, yeah.
the difference, I guess, with last year's use of reserves is that much of it was to pay down the bond with with very little corresponding revenue. Now we are paying down inflation increases over time and still having that revenue increase.
Yes. Eventually, we hope, when we get to a certain point, over 100 prisoners, they'll actually cover 3.6 million approximately, which would have been the debt service principal and interest levy. But we've been forced into not be able to do that. We have to use in general basic, or we'd have to come through with some pretty massive changes in general basic.
Yeah, it's just forcing us to appropriate revenues to different taxing funds we wouldn't otherwise do, and to shift where we're paying for things, just to
Right.
make it a little more complicated for a Joe Q public to understand. But that's not our doing.
It's very complex.
Yeah, Mr. Taylor.
Just one quick factual question, Dennis. On debt service, is the Mobile project included in your numbers?
Not yet, because CIP, I have to have that done, and the board has to make decisions before February 28th, or the end of February, to lock in a pre-debt certification so we can levy this money in debt service. We had to do that last year, but that's just making sure we can levy the money. So we still got the Mobile, which is divided over 5 years with principal and interest. We're gonna have probably something out the Nature Center. We have problems out there, and anything else that comes up.
But the board essentially approved that, right? We approved the Mobile.
Yes.
Debt
out
service.
debt
So I
service,
guess
CIP
I'm wondering,
loan.
to know the real score, can we have that updated next week? Is that? Because otherwise, I mean, that's a pretty big,
Well, it's 50, I forget the exact number, divided over 5, you're talking about 96 to 100,000 more in debt service. It's not shown on here because we haven't officially done it yet. Done our CIP loan. I hate to come out with a number and say, well, it's only gonna be 96,000 more. That's not a true number, because you're gonna have more CIP projects come up between now and February 28th. You could have 300,000 or 400,000 at the Nature Center.
so
We
by
don't know.
February 28th, will we see, I guess what I don't want to have happen is all of a sudden we see that we think that we're making progress, and then that's not really, oh, I didn't show you this over here.
Well, that's identified in my explanations too, when you
Okay.
get to debt service.
And Dennis, I pulled up the January 3rd, 2022 tax rate running total starting sheet,
Okay,
and we were dealing with a 44.9 cent increase in the countywide.
proposed,
Right.
right.
That's worse than this.
Oh, a lot worse than this. But we had the benefit of a sale of a county farm that gave us 2.5 million to help reduce that 44 cents.
Well, we have almost that much more in revenue from the completion of the law enforcement center that we didn't have last year.
Correct.
So there's a lot of different major moving pieces,
Oh, definitely.
but, I don't remember using a ton of reserves last budget, besides the county farm, the one-time sale. I don't remember us using as large a number as we have in the past. Do you, others remember that?
No, and I think the reason we did the county farm over a 2-year period was for that reason as well.
Yeah, we
split it
we
down.
said 2-year period, and we used most of it in the second year,
Correct,
because we needed it in the second year.
correct. Now we don't have that
So,
option anymore.
well, like I said, we have other options.
And then we funded 3 departments, or 2 positions and another full department to the tune of $450-some thousand out of gaming and local options I have not plugged in this year. I'm giving you the numbers as they stand until we plug numbers in through the budget process, which will probably come at the end of the budget cycle.
So you're saying it's a little rosier by the fact that you haven't plugged in
Yes.
local option, a
Yes.
lot of the conservation, soil conservation?
You mean it's
Yeah,
a little
the neighbor-
worse right now? Looking, it looks
It's
a little
worse
worse?
looking, but
Yeah,
it's a
okay.
little, the reality is a little rosier than,
There's funds you could use, absolutely.
And that's always been the case, I think.
Yeah, you always start the worst case scenario, then we back into it at the end of the cycle of other funds we can use.
that makes me more hopeful. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that there's,
Yeah, and you mentioned 1.2 is roughly a 3% share of the reserve, so it would,
Every 1% is $388,888, every 1 cent of reserve we use, wherever we use it.
every 1%?
1%
Okay,
generates $388,888.
so 5% is about 2 million,
Pretty darn close, yep.
going
And
back
that's
to.
obtainable because you have a lot of funds aren't being spent this year, which I'm gonna have show later. But yes, it's attainable.
Well, I think the board would be justified, and if our shortfall was in anywhere close to the additions to reserve from unfilled positions, I don't know exactly what that total is, but it's probably close to 1 million.
It's gonna be close.
So we have every rationale behind us to realize that. I mean, the taxpayers aren't going to want to pay for a position that's not filled and just have it go in the bank.
Right.
So that, we owe that back to the taxpayers through this budget process. So whatever that number is, it's around 1 million. And I think we have that,
It'll be higher.
okay.
Yep.
Well,
And the fact is, that's money we've levied this year that's going, like you say, into the bank that we can use to cover next year, because next year we are levying for the full bore of all the things that are not being spent this year, law enforcement agency, things like that. County attorney, hopefully gets his positions filled by July 1st, but we're gaining money back there. So yeah, I'll come back and tell you, what you got, and you have probably more than you need to balance this out. But you don't want to mess with the general basic and rural basic funds.
and really, the large 9% increase we approved for the attorneys' union is effective July 1.
And that's embedded in our numbers.
Yep.
Yep.
So that means, I mean, unless the positions are filled when they haven't been filled for a year at the current rates, we'll be looking at, like you said, more and more built into the reserves.
that's
Yes.
I just want to underscore, not that you need to hear this, but that's an excellent point. Those are monies that have been levied against the taxpayers
Yep.
that they're owed back. I think that's
Yep,
right on.
yep. So help us come up with that number so we can communicate that clearly.
Yep.
Wherever we appropriate in the budget is fair.
Yep. And like I say, you use general basic reserves to help fund the general shortfall there.
Okay.
You want to go on now with this, or?
Yeah, I just briefly want to like, Mr. Radig left unfortunately, but let's discuss generally your availability for budget reviews. Mr. Taylor, you, basically 3:30 is the earliest start time that's
Yeah,
reliable.
if 3:15 helps anybody, but I can't really do earlier than that.
Is there like certain Fridays for school that are out early or not really? Okay.
The way I have the budget set up right now, we're gonna have 2 weeks of budgets, skip 1 week, because I won't be here. Have 2 weeks, and I gotta go again to Omaha, and then have 2 more weeks, and we're done with by February 20th, we've heard all the budgets by February 20th. That leaves
yeah.
us from February 20th to about April 1st to still discuss all these different options.
Yeah. So is it the 16th? We won't have budget reviews since you'll be gone?
Correct.
Okay.
16th and February 6th, I believe. February
And
6th, yes.
February 6th, you'll also be gone?
Right. But I have it staggered 2 weeks, gone, 2 weeks, gone, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, then we're done. For
Okay.
the first round.
So we know 2 dates we won't have budget reviews, but we
Correct.
have until, the final vote to approve is at the latest April what?
Probably April 1st to the 7th, probably 7th of April,
But the certification vote,
April 30th.
okay,
And have
so,
published 10 days prior. And the catch is the rural newspapers, you gotta have it out a week early for them.
so April 2nd, that's when we can't make adjustments other than move down.
Well, you make adjustments to hearing. You can't go up, but you go down.
That's what I said.
Yeah, okay.
So April 7th, or April 2nd is when we close things out unless we're gonna further reduce.
Right,
And we have 4 weeks until to certify, okay?
yep, yes.
When we had a time crunch, we would schedule budget reviews maybe an hour or two before the board meeting. I mean, I don't want you to be excluded from like every budget review, so, Mr. Taylor, so, I don't know if it makes sense for us to look at just 3:30 meetings from here on out. We have to get the board meetings done. We can't not have the board meetings, so maybe at the conclusion of those meetings, we would do budgets. Unless there's a
Yes.
separate, Dan and I work together and come up with an idea for another date for a budget reviews. Because we could also just, have since they could be later, if we're starting at 4:30, we could have, board meetings at 3:30 for the budget season, and then we could move to, or we could also just stick to 4:30, and we could have, a 3:30 budget session on like a Thursday, Friday.
Even with your 3:30 on days of the board meeting, as in the past, when we're 3:30 to 4:30 for the regular board meeting, we have continued on with the budget hearings after the board meeting. So at the end of the board meeting agenda, we'd have 3:30 budget discussion for an hour. At 4:30, have the meeting, and then put budget reviews, if needed, at the end of the agenda to finish that day out.
I kind of like that. I'm not speaking for Keith, but I think he's 3:15 or after on most of his work schedules. But I like that because as far as the public thinking, well, I was coming for the regular meeting at 4:30. I didn't realize that you had it at 3:30. That kind of thing, I think can be mitigated by doing budget at 3:30. And then, like you say, continuing on, rather than flipping around and all of a sudden I didn't realize that you were taking this sale up of.
Okay.
That's my opinion, but.
So we're talking about splitting budget reviews pretty much every Tuesday.
If needed.
Getting an hour done, go to the board meeting and continue afterwards.
Correct, if it's needed.
Okay.
A lot of these budgets, when you look at them, you'll see, you take all the wage and benefit increases in each department, you take the difference there of what they increase their budget. Most budgets stayed within 0 and 3% increases. Now, the only ones that might go up a little further possibly could be like juvenile detention or, I want to say the correctional facility on food and ACH, that went up a little bit because you're dealing with a different animal now. But overall, the budgets are pretty flat to 3% increase on operational. They
Okay.
did do what you requested.
Well, give the flexibility to, I guess, department heads on if they can't make the later one, they can make the earlier one. But if at all possible, anything that involves anything that the public should be more aware of, even if they're not participating, try to have that after the board meeting since they're aware of that time.
Right.
If there's anything, sort of that the board just needs to hammer out with, some get into the weeds on something, we can do that at 3:30. If it's not of much interest or consequence.
Absolutely.
One last point, and then I'll shut up. One thing on reserves that I guess I'm curious about. How are we growing to such a degree that we're up to 29%? Now, I get on some of these budgets, well, you have 5 unfilled positions, so what do you expect, right? That makes
Right.
sense. But on these other ones, I want to make sure that we deep dive enough too, where we say, well, this person's not increasing his or her budget at all. Well, that's great. But if we're amassing and there's a lot that's not being spent, I think for those that are less easily explicable, that would be good for us to look at a little bit. Like, why are we taxing for it or budgeting for it if we're not needing it and we're growing to that degree? So just a thought as we
Yeah,
go.
and that'll show up when I come back with unspent balances. That'll show up there. Also, I'll give you an example, our treasurer budget 500,000 for, well, last year's 300,000, I believe, for interest on investments came in at 700 or 800,000. So you gained in your cash balances 300 or 400,000. This year, she budgeted 500,000. For the current year, we're up to 761,000 already halfway through the year. So there's potential, that's why reserves do grow. And next year, I believe she budgeted from 500, she went to 700, potentially could be more, but that's with the treasurer because she's our investment officer. But we will discuss whether things, if it could even be higher than 700, because we're at 761 already, halfway through the year. So, and interest rates, you don't know, they could plummet, and then interest really affects our tax asking because it's dollar per dollar. If you gain 300,000, that could potentially cover expenses or reduce our tax rate by 300,000. But if you have, say, $1 million there, she only collects 500,000, digs in our reserves. So it's a lot of variables. So
just the difference between the 0% interest time and now.
Oh, tremendous difference.
We've gained maybe 2% to the reserves just from that. Sounds
Probably.
like.
She, when she was actually doing budgets, say in 24, maybe in 23, we're talking about 0 to 1%. Now we're talking about 5.5%, almost 3 to 4 times more. So it makes a big difference. Interest on investments does make a difference in our general basic fund tremendously.
Okay. So, yeah, we have at least $1 million in unobligated funds that we've taxed for. We have another 2 or so percent that
Yep.
we've just gained from interest.
Yep,
So those are probably the biggest pieces then, right?
yep.
Okay.
Do you want, should we go
Dennis, I
ahead?
talked to you about this, but on these start times, and I think the 3:30 is great, and I agree with Jeremy that I think if folks want to come to a regular meeting, they want to participate in a board hearing, or in the budget hearing, I think that makes sense, but we need to, and this is mostly for you, Chairman, but we need to make sure when we set these dates that we get that over to Ron at the LEC as soon as possible, because we want to be able to work, because we have, closed sessions, that
Yes.
sort of thing, and if we have to move to a totally different day, that's fine. But if there's a chance where we can alternate weeks, where if we've got a budget hearing one week and an LEC the next week, we can do that. We're just trying to be cognizant of, they want to work around us,
Yeah.
so
And
whenever we
hopefully,
can.
hopefully they will.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
go to 2:30 maybe.
yeah, or something, whatever. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, well, yeah, the reality is there's 5 of us doing the budget, and I know that we're in the closed session sometimes, but that's not every week, so I think staggering that would be helpful. Because otherwise, we can't do what we just talked about. We'll just have to, closed sessions are going to fill up that first hour.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Should we move on then?
Yep.
Okay, now we're down to the last piece of page 2. This section is I will break down all county funds with the reasons why there is an overall tax increase. In general basic, House File 17 sets our tax asking tax rates for results in a tax asking increase of 704.5 $704,510, and a tax rate decrease of 7.634 cents per $1,000. To balance out the revenues holding at this tax rate, we'll have to generate $1,035,373 worth of revenues to achieve a balanced budget. When I say a balanced budget, that's balancing revenues to expenditures. Our rate's going down, we're still increasing taxes with a lower tax rate, so it is taking a little bit of benefit of the new construction. But we aren't getting the total benefit because they're forcing us to reduce our tax rate. So, and there are several areas of revenues that can eliminate this shortfall. Next page, Rural Basic Fund. This is a fund that's in a good position because House File 718 sets our tax asking tax rate. Tax rate increase of $87,568 and a tax rate decrease of 4.82 cents per $1,000. With this scenario, budgets will return actually $57,709 back to the rural basic reserves, which then opens some discussion using local option sales tax funds we've used in the past for soil conservation. That's $39,000. Move that back over to rural basic, and you're still putting $18,000 back in. And I'll show the reserves when we get down to the bottom here. And that'll free up $39,000 more local option sales tax to be used somewhere else, other than rural basic, because we're in good shape in rural basic. General sup, this is the one where we have increases, and I got 1,411,000 worth of increases, and here's the reasons why. The emergency paramedics funding has been moved from general basic and rural basic to the general supplemental fund, which results in savings of those two funds of $183,443 each. That's in general basic, $183,043, and rural basic, $188,000 or $183,443, for a total of $366,086. So we're helping out our two restricted funds and putting in an unrestricted fund, and that causes a tax increase in that one at the moment. All these can be changed by using other revenues. With addition of new LEC, and I should have security there, with addition of new LEC security, the budget for fiscal year 25 will be $398,591. This was approved by the Board of Supervisors previously. We didn't have an exact number, but this is what it's going to cost. That's in general stuff that was never there before. Increase $200,000 self-liability, as there will be additional attorney fees, potential increase in insurance costs, and also possible litigation with other lawsuits besides, suits besides the LEC. Now, $200,000, hopefully that'll cover our attorney fees. Right now, just to give you an example, in the LEC, they're going to approve a claim tomorrow. They've spent close to $54,000 for the attorney fees there already, and we haven't even got started in this process. So looking at that, we need the money in our general fund to cover our expenses. Now, when the LEC runs out of money, they've used up this miscellaneous fund, then where do the attorney fees fall back to? Go ahead, Jeremy.
So, two questions on that. What attorney fees are being proposed to be approved tomorrow?
Approved tomorrow?
Right.
Okay, that's on the LEC.
Right.
That'll raise that, I think that's $30,000. It's gonna be up to $54,000 total already.
So my question is that's for Jody McDougal,
Yes.
but not for John Templer, is that
No,
correct?
that's why we're increasing our liability fund from
Okay.
1 million to 1.2, because we have no idea what this is gonna cost us. None.
Okay. And then is that going to be an additional ask back to us? Because I anticipate that wasn't, rewind to 3 years ago, nobody was anticipating, hey, how much are we going to need for costly litigation? And this isn't a criticism of anybody. I just wonder, are those monies there right now, or are we going to anticipate
For the LEC?
coming back to the board and saying, hey, does
Well,
that
the
question
LEC
make sense to anybody besides
LEC's
myself?
got about 190 to 200,000 available to pay attorney fees.
Okay.
When that runs out, then the question mark comes up, where do they go? They cannot generate money, so
All
there's
right, I get it.
potential.
That's why I'm asking the question.
There's potential. If they run out of money for attorney fees, it could fall back to Woodbury County, where Woodbury County's paying both the LEC attorney fees and our attorney fees. Hope to goodness it never gets that far. That's an extreme possibility, and it could. These potential litigation go on for years, so we don't know. So that's the reason there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And then employee benefits from general basic fund increased 238,643, which is levied in general supplemental fund and transferred back to general basic. So we budget all the stuff in general basic, all the benefits, like IPERS, insurance, all that, in general basic, but it's funded out of general supplemental, has been for the last many, many, many years. So there's an increase there. Then we get down to below, there's a general election, November 24, which totals 208,513. These costs are paid countywide. So with the total of those 5 reasons there, you got $1,411,836 already. And then the difference between that and the increase back here on page 2, the $1,799,000, you're talking about $300-some thousand worth of increases through salary increases, benefits, also whatever potential are other increases. So that explains pretty good why our general sup is up. Again, it's unlimited, but just a caution, the legislature did have included in this package they passed, moving all court services over to general basic, which was crazy, because court, we do not have any choices on. We don't. So why wouldn't it stay in an unlimited fund? But they did strike that. But they can amend this file at 7/18 next year, next year, next year. They see it isn't going their way somehow, they come back and amend this and make it stricter restraints on the counties, which I hope they don't do. We'll manage with what we got, and that's the way it is.
Okay.
We get down to debt service fund. There's 3 factors affecting why the debt levy increased. There is a CIP loan fiscal year 24 that is not covered by a projected tax increase. That again is where we get back CIP. We have to know what these CIP projects are by February 28th, so we get the pre-tax certification done. One CIP loan was paid off. That was around $180,000 or so. New revenues for the house and federal prison not being used, and the calculation is done in the previous fiscal year 24 calculate. That's $1.2 million right there, which that is about 4 cents per thousand. Really about 3 cents per thousand. Get every penny's for. And in this case here, on debt service, we can use the new valuation, the increment, all that. So there it's probably even a little bigger, what 1 cent will generate. It's about 3 cents per thousand.
So basically, even though we all intended to use, and we still intend to use the revenues to pay down the bond for the law enforcement center, we just can't show that in the way that it makes the most sense. Like it's
Correct.
paying off the debt levy, we have to say, oh, it's going to the general and we're gonna use it to go to this shelf and this fund. But the end result's the same, it's just, we just make a little less sense
Right.
when we're talking, so,
Correct.
yep. Anything else?
So on February 28th, Dennis, did you say that debt service number will be adjusted?
Yes.
When will this 14.491 cents change, is what I'm wondering?
It will go up at that time. When we figure out what our CIP, now that's saying we aren't doing any more new CIPs for the rest of the year. It'll have to go in 25. But 25, we levy in 26. We always levy the taxes for the new loan the next year. Right now, as of June 20th of 2023, audited, our reserves are 29% for general basic, 9.5% for general sup, and rural basic 17.48%. Again, rural basic probably be a little bit higher, but rural basic isn't our problem this year. General basic, general sup, and debt are our problems. So general basic, hopefully we get about another $2 million added onto that through various sources, income, things this current year. So again, that's where you could go back to possibly, which can be determined on, further down the road. But the reason we got to be done by the 28th, the auditor has to publish and send out mailings to every taxpayer what our tax asking is going to be. So at that point, you want to have them at least what we got in the budget right now, maybe a little more for the debt service, because we can always go back down. You can't go up. This takes the place of that hearing when you had a supermajority, when you exceeded 2% of your general basic and rural basic, you had to have a supermajority to pass that. That is gone. Now everything takes just a majority vote of the board.
The mailings, that's a new requirement.
That's a new requirement. It's going to
What's that
cost
gonna
about
cost?
$40,000, which the auditor doesn't have. We're going to have to come up with. And that goes to every.
That sounds like fiscal conservatism, right?
Yeah. So We can publish probably what we have here, because we can't go any higher, and we don't want to go any higher. We want to go lower, so we noise reduce like we have in the past.
That's March 28th?
20th.
March 20th?
Yep, and they have to publish, and that hearing has to be separate from any budget hearings.
So we have a couple things we're doing. On March 20th, we are communicating, what we have at that point is communicated to the public as this is a possible,
Yeah, this is the highest.
this is the possible worst-case scenario.
Yes,
But then we still have until a couple weeks later on the 2nd of April to actually, what is it called? Publish in the
to publish,
papers?
Yep. We have to publish probably April 15th, so I have to have.
Why don't those two dates coincide? Because it's like we're
The 2nd
communicating,
and 15th?
it's
Well,
like,
Let's
Yeah.
make them coincide. And what I mean by that is, let's not say, if we know what we have in front of us, let's not message to the public for $40,000, to Mark's point. Here's our worst-case scenario, and here's where you can be hitting the shorts the most on taxes, and then 2 weeks later, come back and say, in some rural paper, I hope you saw the new message that went out. It's not as bad as it looked 2 weeks ago. I mean, I think we should get March 20th, this is where we're at, and then send out a good newsletter. My opinion.
But you don't want to use all the reserve, or whatever you use reserves and that, until you're done budgeting. And that is until February 20th.
we're just saying, if we can wrap up budgeting by March 20th, then it's ideal.
Right. We'd have to wrap it up by the 20th of,
Otherwise, we have to explain to people why what they got in the mail is wrong.
well, it's not wrong. It is what it is.
At the
without
time, it would
using
be
any
wrong.
reserves.
2 weeks later, it would be wrong, because we're still working.
Yeah, It could be wrong for April 2nd, because you may hold off and just wait and see what happens with the
But
legislature.
yeah,
I guess what
know,
I'm
but it-
suggesting is, let's not hold off. If we know we have
Yeah.
plenty of time, let's not send out, here's the
Just-
worst-case scenario. I know legally, then we can keep
Just-
reducing.
Just remember, you're locking yourself into the tax rate.
Yeah.
Once that's published, that's the end of the tax rates.
Yeah.
It can go down,
Are you
That's
talking
what-
about March 20th?
yes.
The notification to the public is another point where we can't go up?
Correct.
And
You're
then
locked
there's
in March
And then there's
20th.
a April 2nd potential date where we also can't go up?
You can make changes there, but you can't go up.
Okay, so there's
All
like,
you can do is go down after March 20th on tax
there's
asking.
2 points where we're locking ourselves in.
Yep.
And I think if we have 11 weeks, we should know by then.
I believe they call that a nanny state, Chairman Ung.
What's that?
I believe they call that a nanny state.
Yeah.
That's just a caution I have. You're locking yourself in March 20th. You can't go any higher than what we publish.
Well, I agree with Jeremy. I think we need to get after it then. And because we don't need to publish something and then have all these people come, with pitchforks. I mean, we'll have to bust it and do the best we can.
Well, you can use some of the options before we publish then. Because by February 20th, I got all the hearings scheduled, we're done February 20th.
Yeah, I mean, if we're done February 20th and we don't have to publish till March 20th, I say we use every option that there is. And completely agree with.
And you can
what you're
still go lower at your public hearing also. If something came up where a burst of money came in or the legislature changed something, that's what worries me, is what this legislature will do. We didn't expect anything like House File 718 when we budgeted last year. And that helps with the April 30th, because we'll know pretty much what the legislature's gonna do. Hopefully they're done way before that. But that's the key, we're locking ourselves in, and we can't go any higher. We can go lower. but we
Can
can't go any
this
higher.
letter say, this is the picture, but we have this amount of reserves at the ready to ensure no tax rate increase? Or does the law say it just has to be a little Excel file that's printed on a piece of paper and people just figure it out? Like, is it a letter that can explain where we're at in the budgeting process?
Mr. Chair, I believe this letter also has to include city information. It's not just county relevant. So there's
Okay.
a lot more involved than just the county's information that'll be included in the March mailing.
So we're coordinating with the city.
Yes, we'll be coordinating with the cities and working with the other auditors on the new law and how this is going to look.
But at this point, we don't know if if there can be any editorializing, so to speak, in this letter?
Right now, we really haven't assessed as far as
Okay.
that goes, but we can talk to you more
Okay.
about that as we get further in the process.
Well, depending on where we are, whatever is legal to communicate, we'd like to communicate, unless it's illegal to communicate with our constituents.
Yeah, we need to be as transparent as possible. and
Right.
If we
Okay.
have these funds available, maybe we need to say it up front when we're going, before the February 20th.
Well, just scratch what I said about having an extra month of time. We have the same amount of time. It's just another,
Right.
yeah.
We just have that gap from March
Mhm.
20th clear to April 30th,
Yep.
which hopefully we find more items. I don't know if we can find any more cuts, but maybe more revenue too, to help
Okay.
alleviate any problems that's left.
All right. Are we ready to get into the budget reviews? All right, Dennis, let's
Okay,
go
we're gonna
to
start-
general relief, administration.
It's on the tab here, is toward the back here, general relief, or in alphabetical order. Elected officials are alphabetical first, then your departments. So you go back to general relief, and the first one will be on page 1, administration. And I think Jean's here? Yes, she is.
If we could just take a moment, just for your information, I'll be pulling up budget information through our system. It's presented up here, it's also on your screens in front of you. So what you're looking at here is I'll try to get the line item or the departments that we're discussing. The current budget is the budget that we're looking at fiscal year '25. So the current budget column on the screen is what we're talking about. The prior year budget is your fiscal year '24 budget that was already approved and in place. And your prior year balance includes all of the activity up until and including today's claims that were already approved. On any of these line items, we can drill into that. We can look at the past 4 or 5 fiscal years' activity and specific activity per line. So anything that you want pulled up in here, we can get that readily available for your view.
Thank you very much. So could you add another column right now for the budget before the prior year?
Unfortunately, no, not on this, but if you look at what I do here, I can pull up this line here and I go to prior fiscal years. And right here, you have all of these fiscal years. So your fiscal year ending '25 would be here, '24. And you can look at your original budget in this column right here to see all of the past budgets on that line item. So, and then your activity is going to be under your activity column right here. So you can see this has from fiscal year 18 on is where we have data in the system.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Also, our budget book does not include the last pay period of December because I had to have these done by the end of December, so there's no way I could get it. But I do have a printout here, shows every department division by fund, other 6-month total. So when we go through, I can at least give you half a year total.
Okay.
They'll be bigger than what's shown here.
All right.
Okay, so we'll start with administration. That's $26,950. That's been the same since we started using those individuals out there to do the administrative services.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Jean Logan. I'm the director of the Community Action Agency. So we administer the General Assistance Program, also called General Relief, depending on which one of the 99 counties in Iowa that you're in. So really quickly, if you don't know much about that, the county is required to pay for burials for people that are indigent. That is where a lot of the funding goes for. So we work with the coroner, we work with the sheriff's department. Sometimes we're working with mental health officials if there's been a court committal in Cherokee. If that resident was from Woodbury County, we're still responsible if there are no other parties to perform those burials. Other money that's used for general assistance would be rent or utilities or water. We can also do some transportation. And I realize this gets into the second budget, but I thought if I'm talking, I'll just lay it all out there. And so we have purchased work clothing for people. We purchased bus passes for people looking for work or to get them to work. We have also sometimes used funding if there's someone here that has no support, no relatives, and there's a community of relative at home that would take them. We would pay for one-time transportation back to the state where they came from. That happens more often than you might think, actually. And so as we get into it, if there's other questions about what the program does, I'd be happy to answer those. And our budget has been decreased, the actual budget, not the admin, over the years because we had ARPA money. We always use the county funds as the funding of last resort. So if there's anything else we can use to pay for rent, utilities, or anything else, that money will be used first. Unfortunately, with the ending of the ARPA program money at the end of September, we are now starting to use general assistance at a rate that has not been seen since we first received any kind of the ARPA funding.
And Mr. Chair, are we taking up both budgets at the same time, or are we just doing administration first?
If it's listed separately, we should take them up separately.
I'll move to approve administration.
I'll second the motion by Taylor to receive. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0.
Okay, turn the page, the next one, page 2, and this shows the budget is 76,500, up 1,500 from the previous year. So far this year, they spent 54,704. If you double that, it'd be 108,000 or 109,000. We didn't increase the budget to that number because the previous year was 75,000 and there's 56,000 the previous year. Someplace she used ARPA money, that's running out. So well, I mentioned to her, you know, we can go with 76.5. If we do run out of money, we'll have to go back to reserves.
Ms. Taylor?
Thank you. Thank you for what you do. Appreciate you. So 3 questions for you.
Okay.
First one, I see rent payments assistance has gone up. Is there, and looking, that seems appropriate on that you would ask for an increase there to 40,000. Is there a reason for that going up to, I noticed we're up to almost 43,000. Do you anticipate it staying near that level?
Honestly, I think it's gonna go a lot higher than that.
Okay.
So what you would need to know is that general assistance only helps people at or below 100% of the federal poverty level, and we only help up to $500 with anything for a year's worth of time, and that would be a rolling year. So if I would help you in January, we're not gonna help you till the next year if it's $500. You all know rent isn't $500 anywhere now, so we're not able to pay a full month's rent for anybody. But the number of people that are qualifying even for that $500 of assistance has gone up because of a number of factors. There was an ARPA program that allowed payment of rent, and it would pay the full cost of rent, and it might pay several months. That program has ended. The city of Sioux City has taken over the homelessness funding. And we do get, actually, we have received more in emergency shelter grant money, which keeps people, which tries to prevent people from becoming homeless. But that funding is used to help people maybe for multiple months, like maybe 3 months at a time to stabilize their situation. So,
And then my second one, thank you for that. The second one is funeral services have gone down quite a bit. And I noticed that you reduced by about half. Do you anticipate it going down, staying down there?
this one, we have done anywhere from maybe 11 to 27, 30 burials a year. FEMA had a program that we encouraged people to apply for if you were, during COVID, and I'm not sure if that is still the case or not, but if the person passed away and that was listed as a cause, burial would be taken care of by FEMA. So that's part of the reason that it went down.
Okay,
I don't know if that will continue or not.
okay.
So that's always I hate to say it, but it's always a crapshoot. I don't know if it will be 1 a month or 2 a month, and that cost really varies in our budget, as you can see.
I think that's fair for those first 2 questions. My third one, last one. Is it utilities assistance? Can we go down another 5,000 on that? And the reason I ask is 3 years ago, the total was $84, and then the year after is $302. Doesn't look like we've spent anything, and yet we're gonna budget 10,000. And kind of to some of the previous points, looking at how are we building up some reserves, and I realize, I don't know overall, but would it concern you if we went down 5,000 and that to a total of 5,000, given that We haven't exceeded 500 in the last 4 years.
I would encourage you to move it to rent, not to reduce our budget, but to move it to rent.
Okay.
And the reason that we haven't used utilities is because our agency does get the LIHEAP money, the energy assistance money. That's a program that goes on right now throughout the winter. It will do a one-time supplemental payment for people, so we're taking applications until April 30th. After that point in time, if people have utility bills that were not paid, we have been enjoying emergency crisis intervention money, or ESIP money, that has been able to help people with the utilities. So again, I'm gonna use this money last behind everything else that's available to us. So 2 years ago, there was ARPA money available through the state to pay people's utilities for several months on end. Some people have, because of that, haven't had to pay utility bills maybe for 2 years because they qualified for that assistance. That's all changed now. So I would like to keep the funding there if possible, knowing that I could move it to rental assistance if need be, or if you would like to reallocate that to rental assistance. I think we're going to expend every bit of what you're putting in the budget, sadly.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, as being a local pastor, I agree with that, right? My rental requests have skyrocketed in the last 2 years versus utility needs. That has went down for our requesting at my church. So I agree that rent's going up, and that request is really skyrocketing. I agree with Supervisor Taylor. Yeah, utilities, if we only spent less than 500 over the last 3 or 4 years, I understand the need for that, but I would say move some of that into the rent. The question is, do we want to do 10,000, 5, 5 or 10,000?
I would agree with you in terms of, I'd move to receive and make a suggestion. If you moved, right now, you're at 5,000, or 10,000 on utilities.
Yeah.
To move 6,500 to
Rent?
to rent.
Okay.
I mean, you're at 43,000 for this last year.
Yeah.
And then so it'd be 6,500 instead of 10,000?
Okay.
Yeah, keep the remainder in utilities, and C, I would say, I'd say we could keep that there for this year, the remainder in utilities, and review that next year and see. One question I have is with community action, you guys, with people that are constantly applying for, or reapplying for rent assistance, are they connected with any type of financial coaches, financial counseling programs to help them with budgeting, job assistance? Just because at my church, what we do is when we have repeat people asking for rent or assistance, they go through Financial Peace University, or they sit down and we do budgeting counseling, look at holistic life coaching to help get out of the cycle of debt, so that's just one of my questions. What do you guys do at community action?
So if you are willing to be a resource for us, that you would like to have people referred to you, I would be more than happy to
Okay.
do that. We also have, the Center for Siouxland is a budget counseling.
Okay.
They have budget counseling for anybody that needs to look
Okay.
at their debt and to apply for those financial classes. So of
Okay.
course, we would make those referrals.
Sure, right, okay.
But
Yeah, that's one of my I think it's we're called to help people. At some point, though, I want to help people get off having to always apply or be in that consistent cycle of. But so I'll get with you privately, with our church
Good.
resource and what we do.
And a lot of times, a lot of people are not repeat cases.
Right,
It's,
oh, right.
I had an illness, I
right.
didn't have any sick leave, I missed a
Right.
check or had a car repair.
Right.
There's a lot of those
Yeah.
kind of emergency cases where
True.
people are looking for help. There's no money for car repairs in Sioux City. So
yeah. That's a big
there
one we get
is
too.
money for rent in Sioux
Yep.
City, so we'll fix the car so that we can go to work. We gotta buy the battery or the alternator, and then I didn't get my
Right.
rent paid.
Yeah.
And that's common.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of first time, but we're seeing historically the last 10 years of church, we're seeing a lot of repeats for a lot of factors, which you're probably aware of too, yeah, so, but that's good. Okay, thank you for answering that.
So if we could do 46,500 in rent and 2,000 in utilities, that would be a reduction of 1,500 in the total overall. So I would move to receive with that.
Second?
Motion by Taylor, second by Bittinger, to receive reduced by 1,500 overall. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is the county library.
That's 2 tabs back to the county library tab. In this particular case, there's good news here because they actually lowered their budget $12,380, which means in effect to Woodbury County, our share now drops down to $187,216 as compared to the current budget of, I'm trying to see it here. Page 3, go to page 3. Actually, the budget went up, transfer went up $1,102, which is a 0.5% increase. There are big differences there, and in this case, all they do is certify us with total budget. We take the number of people in each town that participates in the county library and the township total population, then we go per capita and spread it out with that formula. So actually, we're levying $1,102 more than we are the current year, which is shown on page 3.
And this is a state mandated
Yes,
function.
yep.
So,
Now, it can be changed by the vote of the people. They could petition to eliminate the county library, or a city could petition to eliminate the county library. Several cities have done it because the cost increased quite a bit when you reallocate the population.
so with one increase with the, on expense, the department head, to see that's an increase of 5,700, is that department, is that wage plan, is that, what's?
That's coming from the wage plan somewhat.
Okay,
Actually, in this budget, we can't change any of the numbers.
we can't change that.
They're here just for your review. They have their own commission, their own budget, their own hearing. Then they certify us how much they want from Woodbury County after I give them the calculation, knowing their total budget. So we're pretty much locked into this.
Don't they have their own reserves too?
Their own what?
Reserves?
Yes, and I do not have the ability to know what the reserves. Yeah, I do. And they're high. We could, I think they're like, we could take 25,000 each year for the next 2 years to reduce our allocation from the townships, and still they'd have pretty healthy reserves. I don't have the exact number here now, but we could do that, which would reduce the rural tax levy.
So let's do that.
Let's do, yeah.
Yeah.
We can do that. And I'll just notify them we're using part of your reserves to reduce the township levy.
So this is somewhat like district health where we approve the total,
Yep,
but they,
their board sets the budget. They send us what the allocation was from Woodbury County.
yep.
What are their reserves levels at?
I'd have to look, but I think around, I would say almost 70%.
Yeah, I believe, Dennis, when you and I talked last week, I think you said 70 or 75,
I
somewhere right
think it
around there.
was. So it's safe to take 25,
Yeah.
but I need to notify them that they're getting 25 less, just like we do with district health.
Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, there was a state mandate for all regions, if you remember, that they couldn't have more than 20%. So 70 is a little north.
So I'd use 25. You don't want to use it all in 1 year, then what do you do the next year? You're going to increase taxes 50 or
What does that make?
25,000.
What does using 25,000 do to the reserve level?
Oh, 75%, probably gonna knock it down to 50 maybe. I'd have to look to be exact. I don't want to give you numbers that I'm not sure of. But if you take too much, then what are you gonna do the next year? It's the same scenario. You use
Well,
the
I don't know if
reserve.
that's a concern if they're at 75% or at 50%. I mean, what is the rationale for reserves if they don't get county funding? I mean, they get the funding that they budget,
Well, they
so.
might have had intent to, and I don't know that for sure, because I haven't talked to them individually. If they were planning for some capital project or building up the reserves, at one point I think they were, but they had money or a grant that supplemented that.
And they haven't told you during the budgeting process thus far that they're saving up for something?
No.
What would they be saving up for?
New mobile library goes around.
Right.
That's possible, or books. You know, if there's major furniture out, but I don't think there is in the county library.
And if they wanted to do a mobile bookstore or library or something like that, that would be, they would have to build up reserves to do that, or they could
They have two
bond
options.
their
They
own?
can't bond. We're the only ones that can bond in the county.
Okay.
They could come back two ways. They could come back and say, we need more money, tax asking, or we need to have a CIP included in your CIP for a new mobile
Well,
library.
if we're talking about planning for, I mean, if their budget is something that we can't turn down, I would think that a capital improvement, you know, we talk about oversight with the LACs, authorities, different line item expenses. I mean, we have, the county library can have 75% reserves and we're not aware of what they're saving for. That doesn't seem right.
We need
So-
to know what, if they're.
And if they are, I believe that we can utilize CIP, or we can
Correct.
authorize a 1 year, I mean, we're talking about 50,000 here, potentially.
Possibly.
I,
I'd like to at least go back and ask them, why the reserves are so high? Are they planning on something? If not, then we need to come back and knock it down. Our share, we can't knock the city share down, we knock our share down. Because the funds in there are all related back to all the cities donating it and the county. It's a combination.
So
I
we
don't-
can't,
I don't know if we can take it all, probably has to be prorated back out to each town also. Because their fund reserves are accumulation of all city and county money. So if we're gonna take 25, that'd be a certain percent of their reserves, then the cities should also get the benefit of that too, because they were part of that build-up.
isn't that their decision, though?
Yes.
well, I think on a, yeah, kind of on a pro rata basis, we would have to figure out what our percentage of funding is. And then that would be the level of reduction of reserves in terms of contribution mitigation. Does that make sense? What's the percentage that we give versus the other incorporated areas?
We actually give, the total budget's so 275,140, our share is 187,000. So we're giving probably, of that 275, we're getting probably 70%. I'd have to get my calculator up here.
You see what I'm saying? If we're gonna use reserves,
Yeah, about 68%, Dennis.
What?
68%, so yeah, close, yeah.
You're at, okay, thank you.
so I think then we would say, look, that reduction is, our contribution is 68% of, and the other is owed to those incorporated, those towns.
Yeah, at this point, we have to just ask them to do that, right? Because when they budgeted more than they needed, so to speak, they made the decision to levy through the different
Right.
entities, correct?
They said
Because
made
the
the
cities
total-
have to also contribute
Oh, yes,
what the budget says, their share of it?
yes.
So
Their
we're
share
kind
totals-
of unscrambling scrambled eggs here, but
So we're gonna take 25,000, use it on the allocation, should come off the total allocation of 275, take 25 off that, then recalculate what each city and county should levy. Then you're prorating it out to all the cities on the same percentage basis it is for us.
well, I'm just saying, if 25,000 gets them down to approximately 50%, let's do 50, that gets them down to approximately 25%.
Here.
Okay,
I mean, they can
Then
come
the next
back,
year-
if they need to make the case to the cities and the counties for a mobile library or equipment, then they can do that anytime. And
yes.
we have, we have worst-case gaming funds, we have CIP, we have, but if we're in the budget process and there's no budget proposal, this is irresponsible to have 70% reserves. And to know that we've contributed 70% of that over time, I'm glad this was brought up, because hardly anyone knows about the county library, right?
I do.
Well, I know about it as well, but
My mom's on the board.
Oh, well, nothing personal then.
Right there.
Oh, no.
If I missed anything. And the thing is, if you take,
And my kids go there like once a week.
say whatever.
It's a great place, you know, but
Say
yeah.
whatever number you use of reserves, that'll knock down what the contribution gonna be for this next year. Now, the following year, we don't have that 50,000, knock it down. Now we're gonna have to come back and increase the levy by 50,000 to make their budget 275,000.
But I think by doing this, if you've got, because I've heard from several communities that are not happy about what they pay into the county library.
Oh,
And so
absolutely.
this is kind of like a peace offering of sorts. These reserves got built up too high. They need to take them down, give some money back to the county, some back to the communities, and we'll go forward from there. So,
Could I have this scheduled on next week only for the reduction of responsibility for the county and the cities?
So can we
So I can
approve
give you
the,
exact numbers.
Let's
approve
just,
the budget amount and then come back with a reserve reduction of how we're gonna pay for it and what transfer we're gonna make over?
well, we would, this would take the form of a reduction of the allocation, right?
Right, right.
Let-
We aren't reducing their budget, just because they need that money. They just need money from the county and.
I would like to reduce the allocation by 50,000. If we have to come back and increase it for whatever reason, then let's cross that bridge when we come to it. But
Okay. But I'll come back with exact numbers so you know where they are at
Yep.
next week.
So are you moving that today and then
Yes.
seeing if there's a rejoinder? Because we're ahead of February 20th and March 20th and all these times, so we can actually go back up.
yeah,
If we had to.
yeah, right, exactly. So I'd move, reduce by 50,000.
Okay.
I'll let Mark second.
Prorated out, right? Not off the county share. This got to be prorated to all the cities too. So 50,000 of that, it may only affect us by 30,000.
But I think
I
you're
understood it as
suggesting-
the county share because then that's the peace offering we referenced that the others calculate what they need to.
This is part of the total calculation. They need 275,000. That's why I spread out to all the 6 cities in the county.
So
So now we're only giving,
how are we approving the budget that other cities approve already? Or how does
this
this?
allocation here is sent out by the county library. After I calculate these out, it's sent out to the towns.
Right, but this is the county's allocation only?
The 187?
Oh,
The
275.
275,
No,
140.
that's a total that's their total budget. Take their total budget divided by per capita.
If you could look at page 5, that'll show you the breakout of that 275,000.
Yeah, that'd be more explanatory. Sorry.
Okay.
Right, if we reduce the overall, it
Yeah,
would
we gotta reduce
recalculate.
the 275
Right.
revenue down to 225, and then spread that 50
50, right.
over all these areas here. So the benefit to the county would be 60% of 50, about 30,000.
Right,
And to the towns, it reduce all their allocations.
right.
By equal per capita. Does that make more sense?
Okay, so should the motion be for the 68.4%?
04, 0.04, yeah, 0.04.
Or can we tell them to reduce their allocations by approving minus 50,000 and they have to
In their
do
budget?
something? Yeah,
I don't know, their budget didn't go up hardly at all. It actually went up a little bit here.
no, I don't think you're understanding what I'm saying. I mean,
You're reducing the allocation, not the budget.
right, are we able to reduce
You're reducing
50
the
or should
funding.
we reduce 68% of 50?
I don't reduce 50,000 total. Because that has to be divided out to all the towns and notify them now that they're gonna have to pay less.
Do we have that authority to tell the other towns this is what you're reducing by? Or do we only have the authority to say this is what we're reducing by?
Right, that's the question.
More of a legal
We
question.
don't have our
Can we
legal counsel, do we?
tell Bronson, hey, you're not gonna give this much? And
No, you're gonna levy less on their budget.
Yeah, they're gonna let.
Because these 6 towns here are the one that voted to stay in the library. Several voted out because they couldn't afford it the way the breakdown of population went. So they dropped out. And what this would do would reduce ours by 68.04% and reduce the city's total share 31.96%.
But our action makes the county library's proposal to the cities less?
Yes.
Can
Okay.
I ask a question?
Yep.
If you look at the revenue, that's what we're actually reducing, correct? We'd be reducing the revenue. The expenses would remain the same because they need to have the same budget.
Just the revenue.
But if you
no
look at your
expenses.
screens now, the revenue is 275,140. Now, if you're reducing the county amount, you would only be reducing the auditor's transfer line. If you're reducing the full 50,000, then we would change the revenue on the reimbursement other entity by that 30-some% that's remaining for the cities. Is that correct, Dennis?
All you're reducing is the revenue. You aren't messing with their expenditures at all. That's locked in.
Yeah, so if
So
we
we
wanted
knock
them to
50
use,
off, it'd be 225, 140, then I go back and the computer, I got it set up so it'll recalculate all these amounts, but the amounts will all be less, which I don't know how the city ever complained about that.
so
They can't, they wouldn't.
if they reduced out of their reserves by 50,000, and if our share is 68% of that, that'd be 34,000 on the county's end. And then this, like, I did some math, like Mobile pays 14% of the remaining, Lawton pays 7.8, then the rest of them are all down in the twos, as far as what they're, of the
Yes.
total budget.
Yeah, on our share of the budget, 187, it dropped down by the 68% of that 50,000.
Which would be 34,000.
Yep.
What's the total reserve number that they have right now?
Nope, I do not
We don't.
remember. I know it's in the, Dan and I looked at it, and it's right around 70.
I thought it was like 70, I thought it was 75. I thought you were,
75,000.
I think it's what you were.
So you take 75 into 275,000, isn't that great?
But technically, our action to reduce the auditor's transfer can't be the full 50,000.
No,
Because
Because
we
there's
have to
other-
just reduce our share,
yes.
and then we ask them to reduce their share of 50,000 through their budgeting process.
Right.
And they would, because they wouldn't want to pay more than
No.
us.
If
So,
they can pay less, they'll be happy, very happy.
You said that their reserve level is around 75,000?
I have to go.
75%.
No, I have to go back and look.
But
I'm not
then, you
committed
just
to
said
that.
75,000,
Well,
which is
Dan, I looked at
27%.
75, but I think it's a lot more than that.
He said 75,000, not 75%.
I'm not gonna be tied to that, because
No,
I
I-
need to go back and look. It may be 175,000. Let me look at it to make sure, because I don't want to be misquoted here. And I can go up and look right now if you want me to.
what is, well, I wouldn't mind that if we take on another budget item that someone speaks to.
I
Is
think
there-
that'd be good, because
Yeah.
27% and 70% are too big of a difference. And if it was 75,000 on a $275,000 budget, that's like 27%.
Yeah.
And I'd hate
Yeah.
to have them wake up and say, we're
Yep.
closing the library, and mom is mad, and the kids can't read, and
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we put an
No
agenda
cookies for
item
the
next week, right at the front, to revisit this, on this issue here? It'll only take 5 minutes or less.
Is there a point where you can check, or are you on all these?
What's left here? Civil service, yeah, I'm kind of on all these, because I don't know if Department of Human Services is here, I doubt it. Civil service, that's just a percent of their wages of civil service, 1/2 of 1%. And then Veterans Affairs, it's just administration, IDVA grant and assistance. So I can go up and check it here, and you just continue on,
I think
if
that'd
that's
be
all
good.
right with you. The Department of Human Service has their own label here, which is further back in the book. Civil service, general basic, but that's just 1/2 of 1% of the civil service wages. That's already set. You can't do anything about that.
Okay.
So you just approve that, and Veterans Affairs, Lisa's still here, so I should be back before that.
I don't think so. We're gonna go through C and D pretty quick, because
Yes.
we can't do anything about them. All right,
I'll go look.
You're on the clock.
thanks.
Okay, I will be back shortly.
We will delay on B, County Library, move to C, Department of Human Services and General Basic. I'll move to receive.
Second.
Second by Bittinger. Hearing no discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 4-0. Item D is Civil Service and General Basic. I'll move to receive.
Second.
Second by Bittinger. Hearing no discussion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Passes 4-0. Item E is Veteran Affairs Administration. Would you like to come up and summarize?
Hi, Lisa Robinson, Service Officer at Veteran Affairs Office. Tried to keep it as a minimum. Well, I think I only raised like 6 things. And I did tried to keep it under the 2%. Couple of them, like Mid-America Water, we have no control over. So I did just do a little bit of raise on that. Mileage, because that's always going up. Telephone, nope. I'm highlighting things, so I'm trying to look here. The meal expenses, I mean, like I said, it was trying to look at what we did before.
With the telephone lease, I see the last fiscal year 22-23, it was at 325, 296, and then we've got budgeted 1,000 again.
Because
It seems off.
that's with our cell phone, and we have bought like those hot boxes. So when we do outreach events, there's a monthly charge for that.
For the telephone expense line or the cell phone expense line item? I'm talking about the telephone expense.
Oh, telephone expense
Telephone,
line.
yeah, it's at 1,100. And it looks at the last 3 years, you've only hit a max of about 350.
I guess truthfully, I did not notice that because the auditor's office just sends over the telephone bill, and I guess.
Yeah.
And it used to be that our fax machine ran through our telephone bill.
Okay.
Well, we're emailing a lot more stuff
Right.
now than faxing it.
I would move to reduce that to 500.
I concur.
So that's minus 600 right now.
I guess the same question that Supervisor Bittinger was raising on machinery and equipment.
That was my next one too, yeah.
We haven't used that in 4 years, and it's at $10,000. I would just move to zero that out essentially, unless there's some sort of CIP request or something that we're anticipating. Otherwise, it's like a 4-year placeholder that hasn't been used.
Yeah, I think we just kept it there because our main printer, copier, fax machine is purchased. We purchased that, and it's been like 6 years since we got a different one. I think it's just been kind of, if something goes up, we need to get a different one.
Yeah. And I'm appreciative of that. I think if it happens, come back and see us, and we'll
Okay.
we'll do
Yeah,
something.
no
rather-
problem.
The other line item I'd look at is look at the repairs and maintenance. We've got 5,000 in there, but fiscal year 22-23 was 0 and 0, and so far this year, 0 has been spent. That's building maintenance. Is that something we need to keep there, Dennis, or is that a?
Yes,
We had
because
put-
anytime you reduce a maintenance fund, that you immediately have something that requires maintenance.
Well, weren't we going to use that to replace the windows in
Yeah,
the
so
front of the
I guess my
building?
question is, I appreciate the point, but my worry is that if we look over to Kenny's budget and we see Veterans Affairs,
Yeah.
and we see budgeted there, it's kind of like you have some duplication. And I don't know that Dennis, maybe you can jog my memory, but with Kenny, when we approved doing the Veterans Affairs, moving the door placement, replacing the window, we didn't ask for them to pay for it out of their budget. We asked it out of building services, isn't that
Yes.
correct? So,
Building services.
so I think we can eliminate, because we already have maintenance and repairs and building services. I'd probably move 15,500 from those three.
Yeah.
I'll second. Any other questions? You clear on that?
Can you repeat where you're reducing? I've got
Yeah, so it'd
500.
be the repairs and maintenance to 0, so 5,000 off of that. To Supervisor Bittinger's point on telephone expense, you said 500 or 600 off of that?
Yeah, 600
Yeah.
off that, yeah. Reduce that by 600.
And then 10,000 from machinery and equipment, so it'd actually be 15,600. Is that what you were thinking, Ian?
Yes, sir, yeah. Yeah, that's it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 4-0. Now the IDVA grant.
Page 4. Can we have 0 in there because they weren't sure they were gonna get this grant?
That is money from the state. It's never a guarantee we're going to get it. And we have to put the application in by July 1st. And by June 30th, we have to send the report of what we had used the money for. Anything that's been unused, we have to send back to the state. But this is what we use generally for our outreach events, for our fair events, when we do parades and stuff. But it's not a given we're going to get it. So we kind of leave it that way. We've got two different budgets. One year, we only got 9,500. One year, the state said, no, we're not doing it. So we never know from year to year if you're going to get it or not.
Dennis, what does it matter if we have a budget for this or not?
It really doesn't matter because it's offset by revenue.
Okay, so,
So it's a 0. It has to be 0 because we
It's a
don't
wash.
anticipate anything.
Right. Right.
And
If
at
they
the
do
end of the
get-
year, I have to send our budget report to show what we spent it on.
Right, but
And
that
then
doesn't change the $0 initial.
No. If they do get 10,000, we'll amend the
Yeah,
budget.
it goes
but
into
it's
this
offset.
line item.
Yeah.
move to receive.
Was that to receive multiplied by 1,000,000? Because that would still be 0. We
Right.
could say we received a budget, multiplied it by 1,000,000.
Well
I like
played.
the positive one multiplied by that.
No, it's got to be a multiplier. It can't be an addition because you multiply by 0, you still get 0. I'll second the motion to receive by Taylor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0.
If I could
Assistance.
add something real quick with our outreach events, we have been keeping track and letting you guys know at our commission meetings. Our office, for what we do, like compensation claims, pension claims, DIC claims, monthly. Last, that we pulled it for November, because they updated, what came into the county from the Veteran Affairs Office for 1 month was $2,355.64. Last, for the month of November. And we just keep going up, so all the outreach events, we're trying to bring money in to pay for our office.
That's great.
Thank you. All right, assistance. Next one?
Did we vote on that?
No, not assistance.
No, did we vote on the grant?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
We received it multiplied by 1,000,000.
Okay.
And if we get $1, we can multiply that.
No, no,
No.
no. That motion is done and
Lisa, on rent assistance, are we at more than 0 right now, halfway through the year?
Using it,
Because I noticed it's 5,000 and 11,300 and 0. Same thing with utilities assistance. Are we?
These are
It's-
all the same numbers.
yeah,
To the
we didn't
persons.
raise anything. It's kind of like with Gene for Community Action Agency. There was outside money. And when we do, like rent, they have to go to the city and apply for housing vouchers. For rental assistance, they have to go do LIHEAP, and we strongly recommend they go to Mid-America, try to come up with on a payment plan. City, try to come up with a payment plan, because ours is supposed to be emergency. We can do up to 3 times. But as you were asking for counseling, if it's continuous pattern of use, they have to go through the center of Siouxland or something for counseling, because this is supposed to be a help, not a long-term that we're, okay. well, I can go to Veteran Affairs 3 times a year. They're gonna pay my stuff. No, we're trying to help the help.
These are direct county dollars, right, Dennis?
Yes,
So
dollar for dollar.
So I guess my original question is, have we done any rent payment assistance at all through FY '24?
No.
So we haven't
These
given it
numbers
down.
you see here, exact numbers after 6 months.
Yeah.
So I guess my only issue, and I know this is obviously it's laudable, but we have $15,000 and we're not using it. And yet we did over 11,000 one year and 5,000 another. I just, I guess even if we go down to 10,000, but it just kind of makes me question
Right. I agree.
having $17,200 now. I don't want to zero stuff out, then when it is an actual need, turn any veteran away. It just makes me question that.
Yeah, and it's
Like, we
really
haven't-
kind
We haven't
of,
done $5, but let's,
it's kind of hard judging. Where
Right.
we've said, like with funerals, we haven't had one, and I made the mistake of mentioning we haven't done one. Friday, got a call, and we're doing a funeral, plus the opening and closing at Logan Park.
yeah.
Where, I mean, we can have nothing, and then all of a sudden we have 3 or 4 in 1 month.
And I think the point's well taken on funerals. All of a sudden, if you had 10 funerals, you use up your entire budget and there's no way to plan for it. It does just raise it a little more when it's like you haven't spent $5 through 6 months.
I agree. So if you look on your screens, the last 6-year averages, they're averaging $8,900 a year, averaging for rent. As you can see in 2019, 2020, 2021, of course, there was a lot of money flushed into the system, all that. I think some of this is due, and we're seeing with some of the assistance federal-wise coming off the books. And so I agree with you, Supervisor Taylor. I would go down to 10,000, reduce by 5,100. I would.
The thing is, every dollar you save here is a dollar less we have to worry about on that $1 million. They can always come back for a budget amendment. We'll have potential reserves there to amend it and put it back in. But to help resolve a little bit, it's not much, a cut here would be fine.
Yeah.
Because you'll never turn a vet out, you'll
Right.
never turn assistants out.
We've
Exactly.
always
Always come up with the money.
Right.
So I concur with Dan's suggestion. And I know it sounds like a little here and a little there, but $22,000, at our first day plus whatever reserves from the library. I mean, that's part of the whole package of what we do.
I guess I agree with Dan. I'd like to see the rent payments reduced by 5,100 to 10,000. But then I would also like to see the food and provisions lowered to 5,000, a decrease of 1,000. And then I'd like to see utilities assistance drop by 1,100 to $1,000. And the funerals, I have no problems leaving that because you don't know. I mean, you don't know.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's a decrease of 6,200.
Yes.
I'll
How
move
much
that.
decrease?
Well, no,
Oh,
It'd be
sorry.
more than that.
7,200.
$7,200
$200.
reduction. I move.
Second.
Second by Benjer.
And if we could just please, and thank you, I know you will, but want to reiterate, back to the commission, and Dan and I can do that when we, we will never
Right.
turn anyone away. It just,
Yep.
I know sometimes that news hits, what do you mean they're reducing our stuff?
Right.
We just try to line up revenue with expense.
And just a reminder, we have a meeting tomorrow night.
Thank you.
So if they ask me,
Oh, yeah.
I could say, refer them to you guys.
Dan made the motion.
Yes, send them.
Well, you can say a budget's just a plan, and it's
Yeah.
subject to change.
Yeah.
All right, was there a second?
Yeah.
Mr. Bittinger seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0. Thank you. We're back on county library. Dennis?
Okay, are you sitting down? I'm glad you're all sitting down. When I went up and looked, that's why I didn't want to commit to anything. Their fund balance as of 6/30/23 is $263,735.
263, what now?
735. They got a 95 point, 95% reserve.
263, 735?
Yes.
95 point what?
95 point, I believe I had it here.
If you don't make any allocation this year. Seriously, 187.
Right.
The question I just raised
95.9.
is what if we don't make an allocation this year? The 187 takes care of itself, and essentially there's 76,000, which is ironically about 27%.
That they would have to, that the cities would have to,
No, that would remain in reserve. I mean, I'm just suggesting if the county does not allocate any funds, approves the budget, but doesn't make an allocation, I mean, that would take the lion's share.
so,
I hear that. My only concern is, I'm with you. That's a lot. My only concern is the state and the feds are not coming to help us at all. My always concern is if we go too low, if we hit a bad year in the economy, I mean, we're going into election year. I mean, that's my only concern is whatever happens if we do this, and then if we still are mandated to fund this at what they decide. I mean, I don't
But
know.
we'll fund it the next year,
Yeah,
right? I mean, we'll give
right.
them another 187,000,
Yeah.
and there's never gonna be a time where we're not gonna give them.
Right.
It's just, there's an enormous pot of money that we just discovered,
Yeah.
and we're faced with the either or of going back to
I
taxpayers
guess-
right now.
Yeah.
for
I
more.
guess I would rather sequentially do it over 2, 3, 4 years rather than all at once. Do something like the math works out. So if you wanted to say they leave 25% in reserves, it's about 195,000, which is a short 200,000. That'd be 50,000 a year over 4 years.
The
So we can tell them
cost,
they got to take 50 out this year. They got to take 50 out the next 3.
the caution again, if you did reduce the 587,000 or the whole 275,000, because this prorates out to the cities too, so we won't get the full benefit
Correct.
of that reduction. But the next year, you're gonna come up and fund that 187,000. So you're gonna decrease this year in rural basic, but the next year, you're gonna jump right back up.
And I get the yo-yo effect. We had
But
the same thing
Dennis-
with the farm.
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. We're not using general basic reserves, though.
No, this all
We're
comes out of
using
rural basic.
what we kind of call sometimes reserves within reserves.
Yeah, this is.
This
a
is
separate
not
fund.
something that the county has to like necessarily pay back out of its reserves. It's something where
No.
almost like a benefactor came in and just paid for the budget,
Right,
and next year we're gonna do what we always do.
yep,
I
raise it
don't-
back up. Because now what we're proposing to do is cut it down by whatever number, but then next year, you're gonna come back and raise that number back.
I would
this is
suggest
out of rural
maybe
basic.
what about a compromise? We did this with the farm, where it's 2 years. And you say, 90 and 90 or something like that. But I do think the point's well taken. This isn't really even a reserve. I mean, it's like a pot of money that's sitting there unnecessarily that could fund them for an entire year. I mean, the whole point of reserves is operational expenses for 3 months, which is usually why it works out to 22%. I'm just as nervous the state comes in and does a mandate where they're gonna scoop back money. That's what they did with mental health funding. You had one county that had 128% in reserves, and they said, we're taking anything over 22% and we're gonna scoop it. So, what about a 2-year compromise?
Yeah, and I have one question. Who pays for the bookmobile?
Who pays for,
Who-
they do.
like, if
That's
they
in
wanna
their-
purchase
That's
it.
in your budget. If they
Because they just purchased one, 4 years ago,
Yes.
somewhere in there, a new one?
And that'd be one question, and you're on the board, but you probably don't know, are they budgeting for some capital improvement that we don't know
Well, that's,
about?
yeah, that would be my only
Put it in reserve.
concern,
That's
would
one
be
question
is
we need to ask.
what yeah, and we'd have to find, and I don't know, we have to find that out, but that would be my
We'd
one
have to-
question, is what is the timetable of replacing the bookmobile? And is the money in this fund, is that what they
This
use
is
it
actually
for?
a reserved, there's unobligated reserve, and there's an obligated reserve.
Doesn't make it right or wrong, because we could fund the bookmobile ourselves, or
Do you know how
whatever.
much
you
a
know.
bookmobile is? About? Anyone?
Well, it's like a Class C, kind of like a motorhome, basically, that's retrofitted.
Like 100,000 or?
Oh, I suppose, yeah, that to 150, I'd say. Because it doesn't have the amenities in it, but it's got bookshelves and it's
Donna would
custom-
know.
Michelle seems like she's.
The bookmobile was purchased in fiscal year 19, and it was 160,000
Okay.
at that time, so it is a pretty substantial cost.
At 19?
Yes.
So now it's probably 200,000.
How often,
'Cause I
what's the
remember-
life cycle of a bookmobile?
Oh, well, they had the other one for a long time. You want to drive the bookmobile? They're always looking for
Hey,
drivers looking for work.
If it brings it by, we'll say a prayer over it. We'll bless it, right? Yeah. Let it last. I would agree with Supervisor Taylor. I would compromise a $90,000 reduction, split over 2 years, or whatever, 187, roughly 90, 93, split it. Do we want to make that pending? Do we want to wait to find out?
We could call Donna and ask her if she
Let
knows of
Dennis
any
find out.
pending or reserves or building up for a Pacific
Does
project.
that affect anything? Would that affect the decision if they were saving for a new bootmobile or?
Honestly,
Or do we?
honestly, I don't think so, because the point of being in the budget schedule here is to make your concerns known to the board.
Right.
Or email us or Dennis. I mean, if there's a need, we can look at that through CIP.
Yes.
I say we do the
Yeah, but when the
90,000
book-
today, but we could always go back up. If they
Yes.
said you didn't think about this.
I mean, I would see the bookmobile being like the MRAP or whatever the sheriff's office wants. I'm sure you could get MERG grants for that. You know, I think that there would be a lot of ways to pay for that. You know?
And now that MERD knows that they have all this money, how's their application gonna go? We need assistance. We also have about enough to do our own budget for a year.
Now, what this will do, because it's funded out rural basic, will reduce, if you stick with 90, that'll increase the money going into reserves in rural basic. Because right now, with the statutory limits, we're actually putting 57,000 back into reserves with the levy reduced. You don't want to reduce that levy anymore, but there's options there now. You could fund soil conservation out of rural basic, and you could fund part of community development out of rural basic.
And it frees up local option sales tax.
Yes, and then you have it in the budget there for future years.
I
It's
would-
already there.
I would recommend we do exactly whatever half of our current allocation is. And so we're clear that this is a 2-year deal to get to a 20-something% reserve level
Okay.
for like furniture. I mean, in my mind, furniture is where you use that money, not necessarily a vehicle every several years. So that's something the county can help with and plan along with.
Well, we got gaming revenues and we got local option, and that is a rural.
Right, I mean,
function.
those things, you know, they come every year, and we're transparent about what those totals are several times a year, but yeah, that you can't have a,
So, with the 90,000, our share, correct?
It'd be 93,608, split
Okay.
the
For our share?
187, the
Okay,
187.
but then I have to go back and reduce each city by proportion
Right,
share. 'cause-
correct.
So it'll be more than
yes,
90,000.
yes, because all we can do apparently is to reduce our allocation.
Right,
And they are, as we just said, going to reduce theirs, because why wouldn't they?
yeah,
So it's 93,608 is what
Okay.
our reduction would be.
90,000,
93,608.
93,608.
Second.
Hold on, explain this
93,608.
to me. Explain this to me. Where's the 93,608?
So if you look on, page.
So our
Oh, the half of the
allocation-
187.
Yeah, 187,
okay.
216.
Okay, good.
You're taking off 98, or you took off half.
Yeah, just divide 187, 216 by
And then
half.
it'll actually reduce their reserves even a little bit more, because I got to include the cities on this. So they can reduce their allocation, which he'll be happy.
Yeah.
So as you, as a board member of the county library, if you need help to explain this, I will come out with you. Because it should be explained to the library board what we're doing.
And I
All they
don't-
care is they get
yeah.
enough money to function.
And we're on record that we don't necessarily, we're not necessarily saying we want the bookmobile to be mothballed. You know, if there's an issue,
No, they'll still have the
we'll
regular
address
budget.
that. And
Funding
but this is an
budget.
expense that you could pretty much just cover in a year. It's not something that
Yeah.
really needs to be year over year saved in this way.
Right.
So
Correct.
there's motion by Bittinger, second by Taylor, to reduce the allocation by $93,608. Dennis, you'll work with communicating that.
Yep.
And that's half. And we can communicate
Right.
the other half is, the same amount here is intended next time, unless there's
Okay.
extenuating circumstances. You know, this would pay for, you know, half of the mobile library if they needed it. Next year, you know. Hearing no other discussion,
Well, hold on, so we're gonna ask them to reduce, or to take roughly 93,000 out of reserves of our portion, but then if the towns wanna do the same, that's gonna be roughly 44,000.
Spread over the towns. All
Yeah,
towns.
but then that would, so then, year one, they would take about 130-some thousand out of their reserves.
Right.
So they couldn't do that 2 years in a row because they would completely deplete their reserves.
What did you say the reserve level started at right now?
We're at 263. Just have it here. 263 is what our cash reserve is as of June 30th of '23.
So to your point, Mark, it'd probably need to be like half of that next year to get them down to like 25% rather than, yeah, because you're
'Cause-
right, you don't want to leave them with zero.
Yeah, so if the towns take the same reduction at a half, they would pay 43,962 plus our, what was it, 93?
608.
608. That means they'd have to reduce their reserves by 137,570 just this year, which they obviously could not do that again next year because they would,
okay.
that would exceed where the reserves. So yeah, we'd have to cut
Okay.
it in half again the next year, but we could still do that. Yeah,
So-
it's a good start.
We agree the goal is 20 to 25%
Reserves, yep.
reserve levels, just like the county.
Our auditors recommend 25%. State recommends that, but sometimes you lower that. It depends how your revenues are coming in.
Yeah, we can,
That's to make sure you got enough money to cover till taxes come in September 30th.
if we need a number, we can say 25%.
Yeah.
And understanding at some
Yep.
point, that's going to be used for another vehicle.
Yep.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0. Can't believe we didn't catch this last year,
Yeah.
but
For the
But usually we don't see a reserve level, in fairness to us, usually we don't
Right.
see a reserve level noted too, so I don't know if we
Yeah.
knew.
right.
But
That's
catch
a good
this.
question. The things we can only approve, the totals, do they have a reserve?
Yep.
Anything else for the good of the cause? So absent anything else, the next meeting will be starting with budget reviews at 3:30.
3:30.
Regular board meeting at 4:30, and then move back to budget reviews. And you have a full schedule for us next Tuesday?
Yes. I'll go over with you this week.
Okay,
You are the vice chair both.
yep.
I may need to call in based on some military obligations, but
For the 9th?
yeah.
Still have a 3:30 start time on the 9th, is that correct?
Yep.
So then what we have on the 16th, anything?
No.
So then we can maybe have a LEC closed session, or if they want one, on the 16th.
LEC, and if there's any other closed sessions we need to do.
Okay.
We can do that probably on the 16th.
I'll pass that along.
Yep. Okay. First meeting in the books.